So, good evening, councillors. Welcome. I hope we're not going to roast this evening, but the windows are open, so I hope it'll be all right. I've got a number of the usual announcements to make before we start the meeting. So, first of all, on the fire alarm, if you hear the fire alarm, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. And they are clearly marked. For mobile phones, please ensure that your mobile phones are switched off or are on silent. Councillors who are using the Modern Gov app application to access the document pack for the meeting may continue to use their electronic devices. Members should only use their devices to access council and committee information, to limit any distractions from their electronic devices. On recording, this meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast. By entering the council chamber and using the public seating areas, and I see we have some members of the public in the back of the council chamber, you are consenting to being filmed. If this presents any difficulty, please inform Democratic Services, who are just sitting to my right. And there are a couple of small additional points just on the conduct of the meeting. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait for an invitation from the chair. Remember to turn your microphone off when you finish speaking. And please face the microphone when speaking and speak loudly, clearly, and ensure you are as close as possible to the microphone. When referring to a specific report or page, please mention the report, title, page, or paragraph number so that all members have a clear understanding of what is being discussed. And then finally, on another note, your members' post, please could you remember to collect your post from the members' lounge at the close of the meeting if you've not already done so. Thank you. So I'll now kind of go on to the meeting agenda in reality. So agenda item 1, apologies. We have received apologies from councillors Godfrey, Haynes, Kennedy, Luff, Rothwell-Warne, Ryder, Shannon, and I think a late apology from Councillor Carol Cambrites. Are there any other apologies?
From Fraser Dardu as well.
You catch that? Yes. Any other apologies?
Councillor Jill Thomas.
Item 2, declarations of interest. Please raise your hand if there are any declarations of interest. Councillor Canning, do you have a declaration of interest? What is the agenda item that you have the interest in?
Yeah, it's agenda item 15.
Thank you. On that basis, you will be aware that at the time that we come to decide that and discuss that agenda item, that you can declare it again, and then you must leave the chamber entirely. Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? So go on to agenda item 3, which are the minutes. Please could you raise your hand if you are in support of the minutes from the meetings of the 22nd of May 2025. Thank you. I see that's unanimous. That's really helpful. So I can sign, at some point I'll sign the minutes, but I'll sign the minutes. And then, they're with me. Yeah. Apologies. There. Thank you. So we're now on to agenda item 3. The first announcement I would like to make is to welcome the newly elected councillor for Severn Ward following the by-election which took place on the 11th of June. Councillor Moya Shannon can't be with us this evening, but I know that she'll be shortly taking up her duties, and hopefully we'll welcome her at the next council meeting in person. Secondly, I've got a sad announcement to make. We were all deeply saddened to hear of the passing of former county councillor, Labour and Cooperative Party member Brian Usthausen, and our thoughts are with Carol and their family at this very sad time. Brian represented Rodbury Division at Shire Hall for 4 terms between 2005 and 2021. He was known to many on all sides of this chamber, who will know that he and the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu were lifelong friends. He was also a Rodbury Parish councillor, and he taught at Archway School in Stroud for almost 20 years. He will be missed by many people in the Stroud district, and I would now invite those who wish to do so to pay tribute to him. And I'm going to ask Councillor Hoffman, as leader of the Labour group, first of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in danger of repeating a little bit about what you said. So Brian served for 14 years on Gloucestershire County Council as Labour councillor, representing people firstly in Stroud East and then Rodbury Division. He was also, as you say, a councillor on Rodbury Parish Council and taught at Archway. And the tributes have poured in from those who knew him personally, as well as people in his constituency who benefited from his hard work, recognising his warmth and kindness and his dedication to the community. As well as the contribution Brian made as a teacher and councillor, he was a strong peace campaigner and supporter of causes such as Stroud Women's Refuge and Amnesty International. And again, as you say, he became close friends with Desmond Tutu, campaigning against him, alongside him against apartheid. I'm sorry I never met Brian. He was clearly an amazing man with lots of stories to tell about his life. He will clearly be much missed and remembered with great respect and love, and my condolences go to his family and friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoffman. Is there anybody else that would like to pay tribute? Councillor Alden.
Thank you, Chair. I rather ridiculously set up an intergenerational playgroup several years ago, welcoming children and young families and older people to come together, and had absolute pandemonium in the Stroud Baptist Church Hall with toddlers, toys and snacks flying everywhere, and adults of all ages warily sipping tea and dodging Duplo missiles. Brian and his wonderful wife, Carol, came along. And Brian was so full of enthusiasm, he was so kind and joyful. He was really supportive, and that encouraged me to keep going with that group and to work through the madness. I know he did so much more as a county councillor and was generally just a marvellous being, but I just wanted to highlight that one lovely moment. And I'd like to send all my love to Carol and the family. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I knew Brian when I first became a county councillor. We travelled together. I used to pick him up. And Brian was a real family person. He loved his family so dearly. And he really looked forward to getting together in France during the summer months. And I can really remember Brian talking about going to France. He was highly respected, as was said, at Archway School, where he taught for many years. I knew him as well. He used to preach at Christ Church in Nailsworth. He was a local preacher that went around the non-conformist churches in the district. And I also remember Brian for his organising of the annual Holocaust Remembrance Days at the Tabernacle, then later on down in Stroud at in the park. So Brian was well respected, and my thoughts are with Carol and family at this sad time. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson. Is there anybody else that would wish to say? Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. I met Brian when I joined the staff at Archway School in 1990. Brian was a head of house there, known to the pupils as Mr. O, for those who struggled with Oosthuizen as a name, but it was an important name, and people who were in the know about anti-apartheid campaigns clocked it as, oh, he's one of those Oosthuizens. Brian was a person who liked to do things differently, and I think found his spiritual home in Archway, where they did things differently. In those heady pre-national curriculum days, the entire school came off timetable, 2 double periods a week, and pursued electives where the children chose from a list of options put forward by the staff, which was just an amazing thing to be able to offer anything from bobbin lace to the history of the American West to anything. And this was absolutely Brian down to the ground. But he was a superb head of house in his pastoral care for the children, really, really child-centred. And I think everybody felt that. Even if you disagreed with him sometime, you knew absolutely he had the best interests of the pupils at heart every time. And he carried that through into being a county councillor for Rodborough Division, where I suspect a very large turnout was achieved by ex-pupils telling their parents that they had to go to the polls and vote for Mr. O. And he then treated his constituents in the same way. Their best interests were always on his heart. Much love to Carol and family. I'm sure everybody in Rodborough will miss him, and we certainly do.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Is there anybody else that wishes to say anything? And again, our thoughts and love go to Carol and Brian's family at this time. Could I now ask Councillor Turner if she has any announcements to make?
Very much, Chair. Good evening, councillors. Just a few quick announcements. So the first one, you will have had an email through about a local government reorganisation briefing next week on Wednesday the 23rd at 5 p.m. There's an invitation to sign up for that briefing, I think, so we can get a good idea of numbers. It will be hybrid, but if you could make sure to do that, that would be great. We're going to have a chap called Alex Caldy coming, who's the consultant who's working at GCC, and it's very much at the heart of the sort of busy work that's happening at the moment. So a really good opportunity for us to ask all our questions directly to the man who knows. So let's make the most of it. And next thing also on LGR, just a reminder about the county-wide survey that's out at the moment. You can find it on our website or on futuregloucestershire.org.uk. It is an engagement exercise, so it's very much about getting people's feelings at the moment to kind of put some a bit more body behind the options that we will eventually vote on in November. So it looks at things like belonging and delivery of local services and how people interact with the council and things like that. Like all local government surveys, it's a bit irritating, but it does have a free text box, which you should, make use of. Also, Stroud District has around half of the responses so far, and clearly we want to win. So, third quick one, next Tuesday, the 22nd at 12:30, there's a charities group bake sale for our charity this year, which is Hope for Tomorrow. So if you happen to be in the area, do come and eat some cake. And finally, Martin Piercy is still looking for volunteers for the Ethical Investment Policy Working Group. I think we've had some nominations from the Labour group, but if anyone else would like to be part of that working group, do give Martin a shout. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Can I now invite the Chief Executive? I know that she has some announcements to make.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, councillors. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to let you know about some changes in the strategic leadership team of the council. So first of all, I'm delighted to welcome this evening Alice McAlpine as our new monitoring officer. So congratulations to Alice for joining us. We're very pleased to have you with us. She'll keep us on the straight and narrow legally. Also, I'm delighted to welcome to the team. Thank you. I'm also delighted to welcome to the team James Brain as our new Strategic Director of Place. James is at the back of the room, so you can collar him in any interval. They're both very welcome to the team, and I'd just like to thank the group leaders for their part in that particular recruitment process, because it does make all the difference. Unfortunately, there might be another recruitment process along in fairly short order, because my third piece of news, which I think you probably all know by now, is that Andrew will be leaving us in September. So Andrew has been with us for some 7 years now, and he has served as my Strategic Director of Resources, our Strategic Director of Resources, for most of that time, actually. So fairly shortly after I came, I think Andrew was about the first very obvious bit of talent I spotted in the organisation. And of course, he was also the Section 151 officer at that particular point of time. So he's had those two badges for quite some time. And last year, of course, we gave him the additional badge of being Deputy Chief Executive. And I can't tell you what a huge difference that has made to me personally and to the way that the team has run. So I will miss Andrew hugely, but I would like to congratulate him. I have watched his career develop with the greatest of pleasure and with my support, and I'm absolutely delighted that he's been able to secure such a very good post at South Gloucestershire. So we've got a friend in South Gloucestershire, and he goes with my blessing and should go with our blessing as well, and we should be grateful for the service that he has given this council for that last 7 years. So my heartfelt thanks to Andrew.
And I know that possibly members might want to say a few words now, and I just want to exercise a chair's prerogative in just saying also a couple of words, which is that the strength of our council is almost entirely lying within the staff and the work that they do. And Andrew has been such an important member of staff over the last few years, and I've just worked with him for the last year or so, and I've seen how competent, measured he is in the advice that he gives. So I would also like to echo my thanks and to congratulate him on his new job and to wish him well. And I'm going to ask, if necessary, and if people want to, the group leaders might want to say something. So I'm going to call on Councillor Turner, first of all.
I can see Andrew's embarrassed already. Right, here we go. No, I feel really lucky to have worked with you since I became a councillor in 2021, Andrew. You don't get many accountants who also have an appreciation for archaeology, and you don't get many accountants with a great sense of humour, and you've been an absolute pleasure to work with. You are fair, you're very generous with your time, you're fantastic at turning complicated financial things into digestible format for everybody in this chamber, and I know, being a double hatter, how well respected you are across the whole of the council community in Gloucestershire. So it's been lovely working with you. We're absolutely gutted you're going. They're very lucky to have you. And yeah, thanks for all you've done for us. Thank you.
Councillor Hoffman.
Thank you. Yes, Andrew, I'm very disappointed you're going. I've only just got into role, and you have already made my life easier by your openness and your willingness to share information and to offer, to listen to our views. And that has been very, very welcome. So thank you very much, and good luck in what you're going to do.
Councillor Green.
Yes, pretty much echoing what everyone else has said. Since I become a district councillor, Andrew has always been there. Like Chloe said, he manages to take the most complicated data and actually help simpletons like me be able to understand it really well. Again, like everyone else, I'm absolutely gutted that you're going. The group is gutted that you're going, but I know that you'll be absolutely amazing in your next adventure.
Councillor Cohen.
Just quite simply, I think you are quite a remarkable individual, and I will not forget your kindness and your reassurance. Thank you so much.
I think Andrew is going to breathe a huge sigh of relief that we have now got through that. So I'll now go on to the main body of the agenda. So on to item 5. Bear with me. Yes, on to item 5, public questions. There are no public questions. And similarly for agenda item 6, there are no member questions. So we go on to agenda item 7, which is the annual report of the chair of the Audit and Standards Committee for 24-25. And I'm going to invite Councillor Bob Hughes, who is the chair of the Audit and Standards Committee, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So the Council is responsible for ensuring its business is conducted lawfully and to proper standards. This includes ensuring that public money is safeguarded, properly accounted for and used economically, efficiently and effectively. In discharging this responsibility, the Council is responsible for putting in place the proper arrangements for the governance of its affairs. The Audit and Standards Committee is a core component of the Council's effective governance. Our role is to independently oversee and assess the internal control environment, comprising governance, risk management and control, and advise the Council on the adequacy and effectiveness of these arrangements. The committee was established in line with guidance as issued by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, CIPFA, who recommended that audit committees should prepare an annual report to the governing body, this full Council, which sets out the committee's work on how they've discharged their responsibilities, and this report fulfils that requirement. The annual report summarises the work of the committee throughout 24-25 and sets out its plans for the next 12 months. The report also provides independent assurance that the Council has in place adequate and effective governance, risk management and internal control frameworks, internal and external audit services and financial reporting arrangements that can be relied upon and which contribute to the high corporate governance standards that this Council expects and maintains. In my forward, I draw attention to the fact that following the council elections in May 24, 10 out of the 11 members of the committee were new. Therefore, 24-25 was as much about the new members bedding into their roles, whilst at the same time undertaking the duties of the committee. This is assisted hugely by officers who provided an induction training and advice throughout the year. Section 1 and 2 describe the purpose of the report and the role of the committee. Section 4 goes through the committee's achievements in 24-25. I won't go through them all, but there are two I want to mention. The first is that, as well as conducting a range of new audits, we've also been following up more rigorously on previous audits to ensure that actions are completed in a timely way. And this extra focus has proved valuable in keeping progress going and ensuring that all those actions that we said we'd take, we are now taking. On the financial statements, the external auditor issued an unqualified opinion on those for the 3 years ending 31st of March 21, 22 and 23. And there's a real tribute to the finance team. There's been a huge backlog nationwide and very few local authorities have managed to keep ahead as well as we have here. So huge thanks to the team who've made that possible. I'd like to convey my thanks to all members of the committee, to the officers, to internal audit for all the work done during the past year. And in particular, my thanks to Councillor Martin Piercy as Vice Chair. Martin was the only member to have sat on the committee before and has provided guidance and expertise to the whole committee, without which we would have been far less effective. The committee have approved the report and I'm delighted to present it to full council.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. And first of all, are there any questions on the report? Can I ask then, and I'm now going to read out the decision that you are going to be asked to vote on. So what you're being asked to vote on is Council resolves that the annual report 2024-25 be approved as recommended by the Audit and Standards Committee. And I think I have a proposer in Councillor Hughes and a seconder in Councillor Braun. Do either of you wish to speak now, or do you want to reserve your position? Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to say a big thank you to the team who've been involved in preparing this report, but mostly a big thank you to Councillor Hughes for his very effective chairing and management of the committee over the last year, appreciating that it was a new role that he took on. Recently joined the committee, and he was certainly very welcoming to me and to other new members, and I really appreciate the way that he takes us through the agenda very swiftly, but also very effectively. So thank you very much.
Does anybody wish to say anything in the debate? Councillor Piercy and Councillor Hoffman.
Thank you, Chair. I just really want to add my thanks to Catherine's on the Bob for an excellent report, and a certain amount of amazement at how you managed to come into that position. And, you know, I would have thought you'd be doing it for decades. You just eased into that role and made it your own. And, you know, that's great. And I think the committee does a vital role within this council. You know, it's perhaps the most, I can still say, I've come off the ANS committee, but I still think it's perhaps the most important committee in the council in terms of its work around reviewing all those areas that we have within the council in terms of its services, in terms of its projects, and ably supported by the internal audit service that we've got, which does a very good job of going in and reviewing those on behalf of the audit committee. And, you know, I think particularly, you know, a subject close to my heart is risk, as Andrew will know. And I think over the course of the year, there's been tremendous improvements in the management of risk and the scrutiny of risk, which a few years ago, it wasn't quite there. You know, I know there were systems, but I think there just wasn't the discipline and the focus on risk, which we have now, which is, you know, a vital part of the work that we need to do in terms of managing the council going forward, as particularly look through in terms of the next few years. So I would just commend the report to everyone.
Councillor Hoffman.
Thank you. I just very briefly wanted to thank the Audit and Standards Committee, the whole committee, and in particular Councillor Hughes as chair, for this report and for the considerable work that they've carried out on behalf of all of us members over the last year. The committee provides the scrutiny of performance and risks to give us confidence that the financial governance and controls of the council are effective. So I just wanted to add my thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Hughes, do you want to say anything in summing up? If in that case, we're going to go straight to the vote, and we'll be taking the vote with the electronic voting buttons. Once the vote has been opened, the buttons will flash orange. Councillors will need to push button 1, yes, to agree the resolution, 2 for no, and 3 for abstain.
Chair, we're going to have to take a show of hands. We can't get the electronics.
Okay. Councillors, I'm afraid the electronics have failed, possibly in the heat. So in those circumstances, we're going to have to take the vote by a show of hands. So can I ask all those in favour of the resolution to raise their hands? All those who are against the resolution, and are there any abstentions? And I think that's passed unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. Is that going to be for the rest of the meeting?
No, the next one.
Okay.
In front of
Okay. We're going to have a second go on the next report, so, you know, you might be able to vote electronically. So we now go on to the second report from the Audit and Standards Committee, which is item 7B, and it's the annual report on the Treasury management activity and actual prudential indicators, again for 2024-2025. And again, I'd like to invite Councillor Hughes, Chair of the Audit and Standards Committee, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, the Council fully complies with the SIPFA Treasury Management Code of Practice and the SIPFA Prudential Code for Capital Finance in Local Authorities. I told you in my previous report what SIPFA stood for. There will be a short test at the end for anybody who can give all 5. Okay, fair enough. One of the compliance requirements is this report. Full Council has delegated scrutiny of Treasury management to Audit and Standards. The Council's Treasury Management Strategy Statement, TMSS, for the 24-25 financial year was approved by the Council on the 22nd of February 24. Security, liquidity and yield are the priorities applied to any decision to invest. But we've also added a 4th criteria, which is the environmental, social and governance rating of the counterparty. So 2 investments with equal yields, we will select the counterparty with a better ESG rating. During 24-25, there was a financial environment of falling interest rates. They began the year at 5.25 and ended at 4.5. So our approach has been to place investments for longer where cash flow allows to lock into those higher interest rates for longer. In the report, Table 1 on page 30 shows a borrowing of 101.5 million and investments falling from 45.5 to 43 million during 24-25. The table on page 32 shows the Council's 100.7 million of Public Works Loan Board borrowing, which has maturities ranging from 7 years to 41 years. On page 33, paragraph 5.2, it's important to note that the Council has operated within Treasury limits and the prudential indicators approved by Council in February 24. Those are in the appendices on page 39 and 41. Appendix 1 on pages 35 to 38 shows the return on investments. It shows each specified investment, which is under 1 year in duration, with each counterparty as a component of the average daily principal invested of 48.6 million. And then each individual's contribution to the overall interest earned of 2.441 million. And the contribution to the overall rate of interest, the average rate, of 5.02%. I want to briefly touch on the long-term investments, which contributed a return of £257,000 at a rate of 2.57%. Particularly Lothbury Property Fund and Hermes Property Fund. The Lothbury Property Fund we reported on last year, there were problems with that, it's terminated. Our £4 million principal has not been fully repaid. We've had 2.62 million of that, which represents a loss of £907,000. We had already had earmarked reserves to cover that. We've been very prudent in our investments at that point. A further loss of another 120,000 will be charged in the 25-26 financial year to the investment risk reserves once that fund is fully redeemed. The Hermes Property Fund, another one we had long-term investment in, will merge into a fund that's only eligible for pension funds to invest in, and that means our units have to be redeemed, and the consequence of that is that we have a further capital loss of £184,000. And again, that loss is charged to the independent risk reserve. Now, it sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. We also have to take into account, though, that both of those funds actually did produce revenue for us as we were going through. The capital that was invested, and we get a return on that. Lothbury was 491,000, Hermes 359,000, which, if you take all of that into account, it reduces that overall loss that posted to the reserves to around £360,000. Still a lot of money, but a lot less than the headline figures might show. And that's the end of my report, which I commend to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. First of all, can I ask, are there any questions? Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Just a quick one. I wondered, are we progressing the recruitment of an independent member to the audit committee? Sorry, I should probably ask that on the previous item.
No, it's a fair point. And it was one of the items that came up when our internal audit service was being audited. They mentioned the need for an independent member. We have produced an advert. The advert has gone out. We're hoping to get members from that. Now, the recommendation of SIPA, again, anybody who can, all right. The recommendation there is we have 2 independent members. However, we know that they are difficult to recruit. Our constitution only requires us to have 1, so we will go ahead and recruit 1. Now, if during that shortlisting process we find 2 absolutely amazing candidates, we may recruit both. So, just a matter of time on getting the names in now.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Now, this is what you're going to be asked to resolve. Council resolves to approve the Treasury Management Activity Annual Report for 2024-2025 and the actual prudential indicators. And I have Councillor Hughes as a proposer and Councillor Braun as a seconder. Do you wish to speak at this stage? Can I open it up for debate? I'm deeply sad that there is no debate on this. So in the light of no debate, I'm going to go straight to the vote, and we will try the electronic voting system again. So just to remind you, 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. No.
There's a problem between the laptop and the display.
Okay.
To do show of hands again.
Okay. Sorry, again, it's probably not going to work. There's a problem. So I'm going to ask you to do show of hands again. So all of those who are in favour of the resolution, please could you raise your hands? Thank you. All those who are against, could you raise your hands? I see none. And are there any abstentions? I see none. And therefore that also has passed unanimously. Thank you very much. I now go on to agenda item 8, which is recommendations from the Housing Committee. And this is a report 8A, the acquisition of housing capital budget. And in the absence of Councillor Luff, I am going to ask Councillor Lucas Schumacher, Vice Chair of Housing Committee, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can all hear me in spite of this little wind blower here. The report proposes that the Housing Committee, that there's an additional 10 million adding to the acquisition of the housing capital budget, giving a total of 15 million available in this financial year to acquire new affordable homes for the housing revenue account. Council approved the committee's previous recommendation that an additional 3 million be added to the budget earlier this year. However, this increased budget of 5 million is already fully committed due to a quick succession of approaches from developers wishing to sell their 106 properties to the council, and the terms subsequently being agreed, which is outlined in the report. Details of these acquisitions of a total of 30 homes are set out in paragraph 2.3 of the report, and the chair of the committee and ward councillors have been consulted on the specific proposals and are fully supportive of these acquisitions. There appears to be a window of opportunity for the council to acquire more S106 properties, as other registered providers are either not bidding or not bidding enough to ensure that these properties are retained as affordable homes. Whilst it is impossible to forecast whether the council will be able to bid for more properties, we have opportunity knocks. So if further opportunities arise, bids have to be submitted quickly, usually in 1 or 2 weeks. So it is important to have budget available to be able to submit offers quickly and secure these homes for the community. Section 106 homes represent good value for money for the council, offered at discounted rate by developers, and as we found out to our cost when we want to build ourselves, significantly below current build costs. They provide a way to rapidly increase the council stock. However, it is important to note that the actual mix of tenure is determined through the planning process previously, and we cannot control the specification, and the properties are generally on gas and achieve an EPC B as opposed to our own EPC level A, and some space standards are slightly smaller than ours. The funding would be provided through borrowing and capital receipts from the sale of the shared ownership properties on the sites. A financial appraisal is undertaken for each scheme to ensure that the full amount of borrowing can be supported by the future rent income to ensure there's no long-term impact on existing tenants or our own current new homes program. With the increasing demand for affordable homes and the need in the district is high, increasing supply through requiring Section 106 properties is a welcome possibility, and the council is asked to approve the budgetary increase in order that further opportunities can be pursued should they arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. First of all, can I ask, are there any questions? We have Councillor Green and Councillor Brown and Councillor Cook.
Thank you for that. Yes, I find this really interesting. But just one quick question. On page 47, with the financial implications, in fact, as you go on to page 48, it says it's funded from additional HRA borrowing and capital receipts from the sale of shared ownership properties on the sites. I appreciate you've been lumped with this. You may not have the answers, but do we have a breakdown of what the different, I suppose, the difference between what's being borrowed and the capital receipts? Do we know the breakdown of that?
It's not totally known right at the moment because it varies with the share. Sorry. Yeah. I think with shared ownership, it varies with the level of a share that the future tenant stroke owner takes up. So that's not totally predictable, but I can ask for certain figures to be given to you outside the meeting.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. This might be repeating Councillor Green's question slightly, because this could potentially be a 10% increase in our long-term debt. Do you know the figure that we're proposing to increase our borrowing by to fund this?
No, I haven't got that figure to hand. Is there anybody from the management team that can provide that? Andrew?
I think it depends on the exact mix of the housing and the future sites. If your question is about specifically what external borrowing will there be, then that would be assessed at the point which we're making the purchases essentially. Do we need to borrow it from our own cash reserves, or do we need to take an external loan? So what council is required to do is to consider the total amount that we can spend on this, which is what the decision in the report is. And then its later part of the treasury management process is, do we borrow that from within our own cash reserves, or do we go externally?
Councillor Cook.
I'm a little bit like Lucas. I keep, the danger is I'm going to be interrupted by a fan partway through this. That's a joke, by the way. Very good, okay. All right, my question is basically, there's much talk at the current time around the potential with government reorganisation or local reorganisation of assets being frozen. And what we're talking about here is a pot of money that we're trying to put aside to buy things in the future. Have we got any guidance and any protection that we might be able to do to ensure that we can keep doing that up to the point of the reorganisation potentially in a couple of years' time? And linked to that, I think I'd just like to read the general point about where are we in that process about planning for a council housing going forward after 2 years' time. We could be buying all these properties and not knowing exactly where they're going to end up when we're no longer around.
Councillor Schumacher, do you want to?
I think that's above my pay grade. Yeah, I think basically at the moment everybody is unclear what it is, but we are within the whole housing team and the committee. There's a lot of discussions on how we move forward. Do we secure the housing outside the council so that when we amalgamate or disappear, or whatever words you want to use, that the asset is not there to be stripped away from local control. So that will be a real challenge for us to sort out in an as soon as possible time.
Hi, could I ask the Chief Executive, because she might have something to add?
I think what Councillor Schumacher says is probably possibly one possibility, but I'd just like to try and reassure councillors that the sort of discussions that I've been involved in are very much that new unitaries are very likely to want to have programmes of social housing because it is a priority of this government. So I am quite encouraged by the sort of conversations I've been party to, which are really about how can Stroud District Council's housing service lead the way on that, because it's only us and Cheltenham in the county that do that. So just to provide some reassurance, I don't think that a new unitary is likely to look at the asset stripping. It's more likely to look at the huge advantage that we've got in building social homes. So just hopefully provides that a little bit of reassurance.
Chair, can I just ask, I'm not sure the question's been answered around the potential of the asset freeze.
That's a difficult one because government does have the power to freeze our assets, but I think they would only probably apply that in certain circumstances. However, there are discussions going on amongst leaders and chief executives at the moment about trying to make sure that all councils are signed up to not having a fire sale, which is the other side of the equation, isn't it? So, yes, the government has the potential to do that. Are they likely to do that unless they absolutely have to? Probably not. And again, are we likely to be able to divest ourselves of our own assets? Possibly not either. So we need to think about, this is where we've got to think about our responsibility in making sure that we're carrying through those assets to the best of our ability. We might disappear, but our communities won't, and we've got to think about our responsibility to them.
Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. In the report, it mentions buying back former council houses. And I know in my own division, in my own ward, I have mentioned and emailed the officers when houses come on the market. Currently, I know there are 2 that have not been altered in any way, not been additional, but they would be far too expensive to buy, probably. One's non-traditional, and I'm told that you wouldn't want to buy back non-traditional because of having to externally insulate them, etc., like others on the estate have. So my question is, do we know how many, or any idea how many council houses have been bought back for use, please?
I haven't got that figure to hand. I'm happily give that to you after the meeting, after consulting with the officers.
Councillor Hughes.
I noticed on page 48 it says that if that £10 million is underspent, it will not be carried forwards. And I'm wondering about some things we could do with that underspend. And 2 ideas that I had. One was, why don't we actively go out and seek to buy back some of the properties in a way that makes it, more attractive for people who have second homes and renting them out privately and, are thinking about it. Because we know that as ex-council homes, they'll be in a place that is convenient for us to service, and also the quality of it will be quite high. So I'd like that to be considered if there is thing. And then the other thing is that there is a split here between affordable and the shared ownership. And we know that affordable is just sorry, I'm trying to think of a polite word. Affordable is not a good word to describe 80% of market value. It's not affordable at all. It's just non-speak. Anyway, so were we to be able to turn some of those into social housing rather than affordable, my understanding is that £10 million would not buy you as many houses, because the longer term return that comes from a social house rather than an affordable house makes the budget will be smaller in that sense. But if we're going to underspend, we may as well take the opportunity to create more social housing instead of affordable.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Just as a matter of information on your first point, I have pointed officers in my ward to a property that was secured under a Section 106 agreement to be an affordable home and available to a housing association, which was not taken up. And the officers have actually taken that on board and are pursuing it. So it's something that I think officers are very happy to look at if there are any other houses of a similar nature across the district. Are there any other questions? Councillor Watson. Can I ask Councillor Schumacher?
You're talking about the underspend.
The concept of having social housing rather than affordable housing, because that would impact on the budget and how it's spent.
Yeah. So there's been a good presentation from the team on how that is at the moment very difficult to achieve with the high interest rates. And so I think this council is doing its utmost to get to social rents, but it's very difficult to achieve at the moment. And the Section 106 property, as far as I know, cannot be done on social rent. But I would have to go back to the team and get you an answer on that.
Councillor Watson.
My question was on clarity. We talked about Section 106 and buying back council houses, and I think it was alluded to just then. That's not the only way we can procure housing, and there are lots of strange things going on in the housing market. I just wanted to get clear if that money could be spent on other properties that become available if they meet the needs.
This is the proposal that is before you. We would have to go back and bring a new proposal if we wanted to spend in a different way.
I can't see any other questions. Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, Councillor Green.
Can I just ask, do we have the ability to change the tenure of the properties should the shared ownership properties not get taken up? So if they didn't get taken up, would we then be able to say, actually, we'll just rent them out?
I think that's a financial equation that I would have to leave, that the Housing Committee would have to leave to the assessments, just like buying back is subject to an whole assessment by the team, both of the quality, the need in the local area, the waiting list, etc. So that's difficult to say here right now whether that's possible or not, because as it said here, I think in my report, that the viability of a scheme depends on also the developer getting a certain amount of money. So out of that shared ownership. And the same for us then, we need a certain amount of income from the shared ownership to make the whole thing stack up.
Okay, now you're being asked to consider and approve the following resolution. Council resolves that an additional £10 million be added to the Council's capital programme for the HRA's acquisitions of housing capital budget for 2025-2026. And I think Councillor Schumacher is going to propose it and Councillor Cook is going to second it. Could I ask whether you would like to speak?
I'll reserve my remarks, Chair.
Do you want to say anything at this stage, or do you want to reserve your position? Okay. Is there anybody else that wants to take part in the debate? Councillor Green.
I just wanted to say I'm normally quite hesitant at looking at borrowing more money, but this is just, to me, it makes sense. I will be supporting this.
Anybody else? So, Councillor Simkis?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, as some of these properties, these affordable homes, are located in the Kingswood ward, I'm incredibly supportive. And if it means that we retain those affordable housing, which is very much needed, then I'm really happy to support.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Can I just start by saying to Lucas, well done, because that was not easy to do for the first time. So thanks for that. And I'm just going to echo what's been said already. I think really, I think spending this money on social housing is not on affordable housing is not as good as putting it into social housing, in my view. But nonetheless, it's still a good thing that we're doing here, and I would fully support this motion.
Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, just wanted to say how pleased I am to see this paper coming forward. I think at the end of March we had 2 million in the housing capital budget to purchase additional properties, which we then increased to 5 million, and now we're adding an additional 10 million. It just reflects the scale of the housing affordability crisis, with a number of people on our housing waiting list for social housing, over 2,700 people and a further 1,298 households still waiting for homes. So it's really pleasing to see us come forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pleased that this is coming forward because these properties will be part of a normal estate. So it's tenure blind, and that means that the houses are indistinguishable from the other that are in just normal ownership. So that will create a more harmonious, I hope, and trust environment in those estates. I should also say that about 60% of these homes are 1 and 2 bedrooms. So that's where the big pressure is in our housing waiting list. So therefore, I'm really behind this. And, you know, this is happening now. Maybe next year we can do another. And I recommend this to the House.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. I'm now going to move to the vote by a show of hands. So can I ask all those who are in favour of the resolution to raise their hands? Thank you. And if there are any against, I see none. And are there any abstentions? So that has passed unanimously. Thank you very much. So can we now go on to recommendations from Strategy and Resources Committee, agenda item 9. The first report from S&R is agenda item 9A, social value policy and social value measures. And I'm going to invite Councillor Turner, who is the Chair of Strategy and Resources Committee, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this came from the June S&R meeting, and we're asked to do a couple of things. Firstly, to approve the renewed social value policy, and secondly, to approve the development of the social value measures for approval at S&R in October. So a bit of background as to what social value is. It's governed by legislation, and under the Social Value Act of 2012, all authorities like ours have a duty to consider how our service contracts provide benefits across the district. And it's measured in terms of contributions to social, economic and environmental outcomes. This means social value benefits above and beyond the subject matter of the contract that the council's paying for, and it's the supplier's chosen additional social value outcomes based on the measures that we choose. So our renewed policy was at Appendix A. We're continuing to exceed the requirements of the Act, which only requires consideration in service contracts. We go beyond that to include social value in goods and works contracts. And we continue to set the social value evaluation in tenders at 10%. So what's changed in the new policy? It's been expanded to include the national context, including the Procurement Act and the National Procurement Policy Statement, what social value means to Stroud, our aims and objectives as a council, how any social value contributes to our council plan priorities, and any future developments that are coming up in measuring social value. It sets out a tiered approach to applying social value in contracts with different thresholds for different types of contracts with goods and services having lower thresholds for applying social value and works having higher thresholds rather than a flat rate across everything we do as a council. The policy and governance team have done some research to understand how other authorities are doing this stuff, and this has all been fed back into both the policy and the measures. And a consultation workshop was held with officers where they were asked what's been working well, what hasn't been working well, and how we can improve things, having done this now for a few years. This feedback has all been fed in and has amended how we do things going forward. Members have been involved as well, so some of you will have attended the session on the 2nd of July, and the presentation slides in relation to that and a briefing note have been circulated to all members, along with the draft policy and measures, asking for feedback and comments. There's still time if you haven't had a chance to look at that, because the measures are not coming back to SNR till October. So you've got until Friday the 29th of August to let the policy and governance team have your views. So under the Social Value Act, there's no mandated methodology or measurement tool, so it's up to us really what we measure. We're proposing to change how we do that and the measures to ensure that any social value created tracks more closely to our priorities as a council. We've used the Social Value Portal as a tool since 2021, but our contract's due to expire on the 30th of September, and we've decided not to renew that. Although the portal, with its national framework of themes, outcomes and measures, worked well for us at the time, it no longer provides the flexibility we need to measure social value, so we've decided not to go ahead with that, and that comes with a cost saving. Paragraphs 2.22 and 2.29 set out how we're proposing to measure social value in the future. We're proposing a new suite of social value measures, which are shown at Appendix B, that more closely align with our council plan priorities. Work is ongoing on these and will be added to over the next couple of months with further input from both officers and members. And all will have proxy values against them to allow for tender evaluation. And those will come forward to SNR members, as I said, on the 2nd of October. This is all part of our community wealth building activity, and the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, CLES, will be providing us with additional support in the development of our own tool, the proxy values, proportionality and the relevance check. We're also consulting with One Legal on the more contractual side of things, as well as doing quite a bit of awareness raising, both with our existing suppliers and would-be suppliers of the council. The measurement tool will include guidance for using the tool and a detailed description of each measurement, along with examples of expected outcomes. This information will be made available for all officers and suppliers as part of the tender process. Details of local community organisations, voluntary community sector and social enterprises and community hubs will be available as a list where support for these organisations is the chosen measure to make it as easy as possible for our potential suppliers to hook up with a suitable organisation to provide that support. Once the measures are approved by SNR, and I am coming to the end, you'll be relieved to hear, in October, we'll be rolling out the tool for use across the authority, providing training for all officers, informing existing and future suppliers of the changes we've made and the reasons behind them, and details of the additional support provided. Members will be kept up to date with an annual review of social value, as usual, coming from Sarah Turner, and reported to SNR, and this will include the amount of social value created and any further updates needed to the measures and the measurement tool. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Are there any questions? Councillor Cohen.
Obviously, implementing this is taking a great deal of time and energy, and it is money. Even if we haven't spent any physical money, it is costing money. And I wonder whether we've got any real sense of what we expect the outputs to be and what we would want them to be, because otherwise there's going to be an awful lot of work and suppliers providing all sorts of arbitrary social value that may not be what the communities want or need, but just so they can tick a box and will benefit their contract. So is this, I always have great nervousness with this, that social value is something that has spawned an industry, but I'm yet to have any sort of confidence in its outputs. There are probably better ways that it could be delivered. I don't think that's a question to be answered today, but I'd just like that noted.
Quickly respond to that. So, I mean, this isn't voluntary, so, you know, we have to do this. But just to give you an indication of some of the benefits that we have generated so far in terms of additionality. So 6.69 million of social value has been committed, and of that 3.91 million has been delivered. I guess what we're doing now is just tying it more closely to our council plan objectives, exactly to come to the point that you've made, to make sure that the value we are delivering is exactly what we want to be delivering rather than arbitrary measures. So, but I feel confident that for a relatively modest outlay of officer time, we are generating very significant benefits. We did have an outlay of around £10,000 a year for this portal, but we're making the decision not to spend that anymore. So it will just be internal costs, but to deliver multiple £1 million in terms of benefits that we think are important.
Are there any other questions? In the absence of that, I'm going to read out the resolution. This council resolves to approve the renewed social value policy and the development of the new social value measures for final approval at Strategy and Resources Committee on the 2nd of October. I think we have a proposer in Councillor Turner and a seconder with Councillor Canning. Do you wish to speak now, or do you want to reserve your position? Sorry.
I'll reserve my position.
Okay. Does anybody else wish to speak in the debate? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say, although I've seen this several times, but Strategy and Resources and some other meetings I've been at and heard it talked through quite a lot, but I'm actually glad that we're not seeing the last of it tonight, because I think there's been a lot of discussion at meetings I've been at about the list of measures, and inevitably there are going to be some that look too broad and general to some people, others that look too specific. So I think the more time and the more input we can have in that list of measures, and as Chloe said, there's still opportunity for everyone to put that in. So I would urge everyone to look over and consider: is it doing what the question that Councillor Cohen raised? Is it meeting? Do those measures really meet what we want social value to be for this council? But I commend it.
Looking. In the absence of anybody else, could I ask Councillor Canning to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Social value probably is something that feels like quite an unfamiliar topic. Probably many of my fellow councillors in the room, until they became elected and suddenly had a briefing pop up from Sarah Turner in their diaries quite early on in their tenure. But as someone who's been involved in the social value space for the last kind of 7 or 8 years, I've seen just how powerful a tool it can be when it's used and applied really effectively. And in Stroud, we have been really ahead of the curve compared to many other authorities in the UK in terms of how we've applied it and having a policy in place that has effective measures aligned with it, but also that it applies things like a 10% weighting on our bid criteria to make sure that it's really embedded into how and what we buy. This alignment with the council plan, as Councillor Turner pointed out before, really aligns with our ambition as an authority, and also allows us to ensure that what we have agreed in the council plan and everyone in Stroud has had the opportunity to have their say on will be delivered effectively through our supply chain. And using a unique set of measures, we can make it really clear to the market what we need our suppliers to do to help us achieve that and to bring the maximum benefit for our communities, for our environment and our local economy. So I just wanted to say I really welcome the proposed approach. I think Sarah Turner and her team have done a fantastic job to date. I really look forward to seeing how this measurement framework evolves, and as Councillor Brown has just said, the more input that members can bring to that process, the more powerful that framework will be to tell the market what we want from them. And I would strongly encourage everyone to support the proposal that's in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd also like to thank Sarah, who puts a lot of work into ensuring that we understand what we're voting on, and this is quite a complex area. But as Sarah said, I think there is great value, and although the measures perhaps need a bit of tweaking, and there may be other measures that members would like to suggest that occur to them, based on what's happening in their communities. But even from the list we have already, we can see that if additional spend and additional work from our suppliers is going into all the good stuff that's already in there, that we will be doing some really fantastic stuff across the community. So this is very much a linchpin of our community wealth building work. I think it's really exciting that we've moved forward. I like the fact this is a bit iterative. We tried out a portal, it hasn't quite done the right thing. We know we have the expertise in-house to do it better, so that's what we're doing, saving a bit of money that way, and really welcome members' input in terms of finessing the last bit of detail. So I would, yes, ask for your support for this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. So can we now move to the vote, again by a show of hands? All those in favour of this resolution, please raise your hands. I think we might have to count by exception, because I can see, so that if you want to do that, or if I... Can you keep your hands raised? We'll do it by exception. So if there are any who are against this resolution, please could you raise your hands. And those who wish to abstain, and that's 2. So I'll have the figures in a moment. But the resolution has passed. And I'm going to wait before I move on to the next one, just so that we get the actual final figures, so that it's helps for the minutes. So I can hear it's 37 councillors in favour and 2 abstentions. Thank you very much for slight delay. I'm going to move on now to agenda item 9B, which is the canal project update and funding request. And again, I'm going to invite Councillor Chloe Turner, Chair of Strategy and Resources Committee, to introduce the report.
Thank you. We'd be relieved to hear that this is a bit quicker. So this is the canal project that came to SNR on the 26th of June, and we considered the paper there and recommended an additional 1.5 million. So that's what we bring for you to consider today. So in the paper, we're seeking our commitment to continue in the role of the accountable body in managing the grant from the Lottery Fund and the overall management of the project with the Cotswold Canals Partnership. We're seeking Council's approval to allocate an additional 1.5 million of council funding towards the completion of Phase 1B of the Canal Restoration Project, as set out in the report. That is conditional on the award of extra funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And the other thing we're looking to do is reduce the capital budget for the canal project by a total of £49,000, as set out in the report, reflecting the additional contribution from this council and expected contributions from other sources. We're also agreeing that, if this passes, that as the accountable body, the Council is responsible for any funding shortfall or cost increase, save for the additional funding from the lottery application, without which the project would not proceed further. Canal project started up in 2006 with a grant of 12.8 million from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and that was to restore the canal from Thrupp, roughly where Stroud Brewery is, through to Stonehouse. And that section was completed in 2017 with an official opening from, as was the Prince of Wales, now His Majesty the King. It's worth noting that when the project started, the canal had largely been abandoned, so it was either just a muddy ditch or infilled entirely. And perhaps the best example of the transformation is here at Ebley Mill, where a £45 million development was opened in August 2013. A detailed economic impact assessment was conducted and submitted within the National Lottery Heritage bid, and you'll see that in the background papers. This is a strategic regeneration project, a flagship project for this council, restoring and repurposing the canal for the benefit of our communities, for wildlife, preserving our heritage, bringing inward investment through housing, businesses and tourism. Based on detailed research from the Inland Waterways Association and the Canal and Rivers Trust, which are attached at appendices 3 and 4, the monetary value of 10 miles of canal restoration can be equated to a return of around £7.5 million per annum in purely economic terms, and £23 million per annum in terms of the health and well-being it generates. A new nature reserve is also being created at Froombridge. If you haven't had a chance to see the works there, it's really impressive, and it's going to be truly fantastic for overwintering wading birds and all sorts of other wildlife. This project was recently shown in the BBC Countryfile programme. It's the episode called Stroudwater Canal. If you haven't had a chance to look at it already, I'd really recommend it, and it went out to 2.8 million viewers. We now need the additional funding as set out in this report to complete the restoration and reconnect the Stroudwater Canal to the National Canal Network at Sewell Junction, thereby bringing Stroud and Stonehouse back into being canal towns once again. In achieving this, we will realise the strategic benefits of this project and provide a lasting legacy for future generations. The reasons for the project cost increase are set out in the paper, but relate to Brexit, COVID, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and their impact on the cost of materials, labour rates, and general inflation. All infrastructure projects have been impacted, not just this one. Reflecting that, the National Lottery Heritage Fund set aside funding specifically to support COVID impacting projects, and they considered an additional grant request from us in July 2023. During that meeting, it was agreed that reconnection was a strategic objective which should not be scaled back. The board therefore requested a detailed engineering design review to reduce costs and, where possible, for projects to be delivered by volunteers over a longer period if necessary. This review is now complete, and so the additional grant request of 6.5 million was submitted last week to the National Lottery Heritage Fund, with a decision expected at the end of September of this year. All project partners are committed to the completion of this project and have committed funds between them of additional funds of £4 million, of which are 1.5 million is part. All of this additional funding is conditional on the outcome of the National Lottery Heritage Fund bid. This project, it's really important to say, would not be possible without the commitment of the amazing 500 volunteers from across the Cotswold Canals Trust, Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust, Stroud Valleys Project and many other partner organisations. There can't be many strategic projects of this size where so much is delivered by the work of volunteers. It really is truly remarkable. Our own contribution, if agreed tonight, will bring in 8.4 million from National Lottery Heritage Fund and partners, and a further 2.1 million in the benefit in kind of volunteer contribution. To us, this seems a worthy investment to realise the 2.7 million per mile in health and wellbeing benefits and continued inward investment into the district, and is hereby recommended to Council for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. First of all, can I ask, are there any questions? Councillor Hoffman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Turner. I've just got two questions, if that's okay. First one is there any update on the risk identified regarding the land agreement with Ecotricity? And at Strategy and Resources, we talked about how the benefits are measured. So there's significant benefits, which is fantastic to see, but it'd be interesting to know how the breakdown of those measures, those benefits are measured, including net biodiversity impact and net carbon impact.
So I might need a bit of input from our chief executive actually on the Ecotricity front. What I do know is that the legal documents are being drawn up, ready for any decision forthcoming from Ecotricity, so that there won't be any delay at this end. And I believe emails are going backwards and forwards, but we are still not in the position yet to go ahead with that agreement. I don't know whether there's anything, Cathy, you'd like to add.
Thank you very much, Councillor Turner. Yes, there's a very positive exchange going on at the moment between ourselves and Ecotricity. So I think the signs are fair. We just need to help Ecotricity with a few matters of understanding, and I think we're very hopeful. Thank you.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to those volunteers, actually. And one particular volunteer who approached me a few months ago to tell me that they'd been injured using a piece of equipment and to raise really quite serious concerns about the quality of equipment maintenance, quality of training, and particularly training in using equipment and training in operating in hazardous circumstances. So I was attracted to page 122, Appendix 4, line E4, which suggests that the training budget is going to be reduced fairly substantially. And I wanted an assurance for those volunteers and for that individual in particular that health and safety won't be compromised, that training won't be compromised, and that operating standards won't be compromised.
So I didn't get a chance to respond to the second part of Councillor Hoffman's question. So I don't have any additional breakdown beyond what's in the papers tonight, but very happy to take that away and ask Chris to provide some more, unless, Andrew, you've got anything more than what's in there. No. Okay. And in terms of volunteers and health and safety, do you know which organisation the volunteer was working for?
Cotswold Canal Trust.
So an awful lot of work has been done in terms of health and safety, agreeing manuals. There are weekly meetings with the sort of working group now, and protocols for all aspects of that, because clearly, you know, it's covered by legal requirements, and the organisations can't afford to get it wrong. It's not something that we as the council directly influence, because those volunteers are working for, generally speaking, CCT or SVP, but we train as a partnership. The volunteers are trained together. I acknowledge the fact that if the training is cut back, that is an issue, but the protocols are now in place, so it's perhaps more about repeat training, which takes a bit less time. But if you'd like me to, I will take that to the project board and raise it as a direct question there. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. So I feel kind of torn on this one, because to some extent I think it's very exciting. It goes through my lovely 7 wards, and we're going to, of course, reap the potential benefits of this. But on the other hand, it seems to be a never-ending project where millions and millions of pounds are poured in, and then it keeps going on and going on and going on. So my question is, to what extent would approving this additional funding open the canal up to becoming more self-sufficient? Because obviously the cafe and moorings and that sort of thing would be open.
So what this tranche of funding is really about the delivery of the canal and the wildlife schemes along the canal corridor and connecting to the National Canal Network. However, alongside that, over the past few weeks, we have had a series of workshops from not just the immediate canal partnership, but all sorts of additional stakeholders. So the college, for example, and who else was in them? The Wildlife Trust and can you think of any of the other yes, COPSM, all of the many obscure bodies behind the canal. And what we've been talking about is the long-term financial sustainability, essentially, of the canal. So what's it going to look like in terms of the governance model, which will need to change because it's very different, digging a long pond essentially and installing wildlife measures to having boaters coming up and down, interaction with the local community, where are they going to moor, where are they going to charge, where are they going to use a toilet, etc. So those kind of practical measures and where the income is going to come from, how are we going to collect income from the moorings, who's going to enforce where people seek to moor up without paying, etc. So the aim is to open the canal in 2029. So this phase now is all about preparing for that, gearing ourselves up to running an operational canal and all of those kind of considerations around financial sustainability. So if you'd like to come to a future workshop on that subject, you'd be extremely welcome. We're keen to bring in as many stakeholders as possible so we can have a very practical conversation about it.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chloe. My question is, first of all, can I just say that I'm absolutely 100% behind the recommendation that's here, but I have a couple of questions, really. The first one is, I think your characterisation, my understanding is slightly odd. So I kind of just, my understanding is that this request is actually to be a trigger and a sense of commitment from us that will allow the Heritage Fund to be more comfortable at putting money in. Is that a correct understanding? And I've got another question after that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they're looking at the overall funding gap and wanting to see commitment. It's one of their biggest projects across the region, if not the biggest project across the region. So they want to see recommitment from partners, not just in financial terms. To be honest, they're as interested as in the in-kind benefit of the volunteering. But yes, they definitely want to see that commitment to the project.
And my second question is, therefore, there is a risk that we do run a risk that the Heritage Fund, the Gloucestershire Heritage Fund, will not come through. And my question is, what is Plan B?
Yes, so that is a risk, and we acknowledge that. What we have talked about a bit is there's a sort of portfolio of options that could come back. They could come back with a straight no. I think that's probably quite unlikely. They've been in this project for a long time. As I said, it is, if not their flagship, one of their flagship projects. So, and the aim of the project is to reconnect to the National Canal Network. So I'd be quite surprised if they walked away at this point, given that they've already indicated they're open to a grant request in view of all the rising costs as a result of COVID and the other factors. What could happen is that they come back with a sort of counter offer, and that at that point we will need to work with them. We will come back to council with a revised proposal that may be about different timeframes. It may be about chunking the project in different ways. It may be about seeking different forms of funding. But we would come back to council and whatever is proposed on the table, you would have the opportunity to scrutinise that and decide. Thank you.
Councillor Hammond. Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself in the happy position of being to some extent in agreement with Councillor Brown. Put simply, my question is, with this additional ask, is there an end in sight to what this council is being asked to provide. We often in this chamber debate important spending priorities to benefit people right across the district. And while as a happy kayak owner, I very much enjoy the canal and I think this is a fantastic project, I do worry that we might be somewhat blinded with the ambition of the project and just putting more money in and more money in. And I guess, is this our high-speed train network project?
Thank you. I do recognise that this is a very significant ask, but what we are delivering here is a generational project. So I don't think we should be comparing it to sort of day-to-day expenditure or even kind of 5-year expenditure. We're talking about delivering something for the next generation. So, and we're also talking about, in the context of what we stand to gain, our contribution being a relatively small part of it. So we put in 1.5, but we would get back 8.4, and we would only proceed with our 1.5 if we get back the 8.4. But I don't want to undermine the fact it is a very considerable sum of money. We've tried to draw out in the report the very significant benefits we expect to generate from this in terms of social value, economic and environmental benefits. And I think just the wider benefits to our communities across the whole district, and the sort of the significance of the canal in terms of being a ribbon of infrastructure that runs through and impacts everyone's lives, even if they don't live directly near it. So we see the benefit, and we've tried to express that. But yes, it is a significant sum of money that we are asking tonight, and we do take this very seriously. Thank you.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you. The background to my question is that I live right by the canal, and this can be quite traumatic because things suddenly happen out of the blue without warning. I'm going back over 20 years to recall the incident when a bulldozer was driven at my husband and neighbours, and my husband was the person who didn't run, wasn't actually hit by the bulldozer, but was on the green for 3 days on a bench, single-handedly stopping the bulldozers digging up the green. When they eventually did dig up the green, we waited 9 years and then were suddenly told our road was going to be closed and there would be no vehicular access, even for disabled neighbours, for a considerable period of time. Between the hours of 9 and 5:30, and we had to do a roadblock, put a stroppy lot down my road to stop these vehicles coming in, to fill the ditch in again so that the work could continue. It has been that bad. So while I'm fully supportive of the canal development, can I have an assurance that people who live right by the canal will be given updates on the work happening, and assurances of how it all joins up? Because it used to be the ultimate example of non-joined up thinking, and it really needs to connect, because that's what a canal should do. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds appalling, and we certainly don't want that to happen again. There are very few people who live near the section that we're talking about tonight. It's primarily about reinstating the missing mile, which is currently a field, because the road was built over where the canal was. But certainly take that on board. A lot of this is covered by planning, so residents who live nearby would automatically be consulted. Do you want to come back?
I do want to come back that everybody who lives by the canal is affected by the prospect of it joining up.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You see what I mean? Everybody who lives by the canal does need to know, because it will make a huge difference
definitely
to the people who live, hopefully a positive one.
Yeah, you're dead right, and that is why we're having these workshops, to start talking about those potential conflicts. And we need to be real about it. There will be conflicts, and we need to be able to work through them sensibly and practically, because people who've been living alongside a very lovely but very peaceful canal for quite a long time, and then have boaters arrive, inevitably it's going to feel quite different. Hopefully there will be great positives as well, because it will be bringing all that inward investment. But yes, and we also welcome you into the canal workshops to come and talk about this stuff.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair, for a second question. I can just go back to Councillor Hamilton's question, because I don't think it was quite answered. To what extent does this bring us closer to the end of the project?
this is the funding required to finish the project and connect to the National Canal Network at Sewell. By coincidence, 2029 is the 250-year anniversary of the Cotswold Canals Trust, so there is quite a nice impetus there to aim for that, but that was going to be the date anyway. But everything will be thrown at achieving that, and you know that will be the end of this restoration project.
I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to read out quite slowly because I don't think it's up on the screen. Oh, now it is. Fantastic. The resolution that you're being asked to consider. This council resolves to confirm their commitment to acting as the accountable body in managing the grant from the Lottery Fund and the overall management of the project with the Cotswold Canals Partnership. The council approves to 1. Allocate an additional £1.5 million of council funding towards the completion of Phase 1B Canal Restoration Project as set out in the report, conditional on the award of extra funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. 2. To reduce the capital budget for the canal project by a total of £49,000 as set out in this report, reflecting the additional contribution from this council and expected contributions of other sources. And 3, agree that as the accountable body, the council is responsible for any funding shortfall or cost increase, save for the additional funding from the lottery application, without which the project would not proceed further. And I have Councillor Turner as the proposer and Councillor Helen Caton-Hughes as the seconder. Again, do you wish to speak at this time or do you want to reserve your right?
May I reserve my right? Thank you, Chair.
Can I open it up for debate? Does anybody else want to speak in the debate? Councillor Cook, Councillor Oldham.
Thank you, Chair. My concern with this is absolutely not with spending the money that we've got here, but I am very concerned that there is a possibility that the Heritage Fund will not come through with that. And I've heard, flagship projects on Brinscombe Port, and we know what happened there. Well, I've also heard of big projects and important projects like our local plan, and we know what happened there. So I think my appeal really is that we need to show leadership, and when it comes down to Plan B, we actually have something firm in place early. Now, I know it's work that hopefully we will never have to call upon, but nonetheless, I think in your response, Chloe, you said to my question, you said maybe 4 times. And I think that we need to be better than maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. I just think we need to have a plan that says, if this happens, this is what will happen, the steps that we will take. Not necessarily up to the public, but which is fine, but at least for us, because the danger is, what will happen is, if the Heritage Fund says no, we're going to look foolish. Yeah, because people will think, well, it's another project that's gone down the tubes. And and what happens when it goes down the tubes is you don't hear anything about it. Public out there don't hear a thing about what's happening with it because we're busy trying to work out what we're going to do next. And I think that it's important that we have a plan in place, so a plan B in place, so that when this happens, we can say to the public, this has happened, it's unfortunate, and this is what we're doing about it. One final point, I think, and it's worth pointing out on this. We are the accountable body for this, which means that if the funding doesn't come through, we have further responsibility for what the costs of winding down the projects, and I think members should be aware of that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Oldham.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be fully supporting this motion tonight. The canal is so important to our communities across the district, not least to my own ward, Brimscombe and Thrupp, where the locals like to maintain such pastimes as Signet Watch, glowworm updates and otter spotters. And so I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful project. And I'd like to also point members' attention to page 129 of the report, that this is a project that's been going since 2006 and is 90% complete. So we're nearly there. Come on, guys, we can do it. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this project, and I have done from the start, having been on the council for some years. I am just slightly concerned that the council will not be considered as an open checkbook, and that we, I understand, and in hindsight, and Chloe mentioned about the 400 volunteers, which have done an excellent job. You see them daily working on the canal. And I guess that those type of people that would have volunteered somewhere else. I do wonder in hindsight whether back in the day we'd have been better getting a contractor to have done the whole thing and have got it done at the cost then. I will be supporting this, but I would hate that we come back again and want more money. I think, that would be challenging for us all.
Thank you, Councillor Piercy.
Thank you, Chair. I think firstly we ought to thank the author of the very comprehensive report, the chair of the Cotswold Canal Collection. It's been a very thorough report and allow us to be able to get into a lot of detail about the proposal that's come forward and allow to be able to prompt the questions that have occurred. This council has supported the project from its inception, and there have been many members sitting in this chamber and the chamber before that have supported and spent a lot of time and personal effort and resources into delivering this project to where we are now. And now we are at the privileged position of trying to finish, do the last missing mile. I acknowledge that there are risks, and of course, there may be when the national lottery funding comes through, it might not come through. It might come through with caveats. But I think it's such an important project. It's a project of regional and I think national significance that affects positively a lot of people. There's a lot of studies out there about the positive effects of things like green spaces and canals to health and mental well-being, for all of our residents and for visitors. So I think I will be supporting it. There's a lot of interest in canals. I don't know if you clocked how many television programmes there are about canals. That's, I have to be honest, one of my guilty pleasures is watching canal programmes. There's one at the moment. So I think, it is going to attract a lot of interest. It is going to be well supported, and I'll be fully supporting it.
Cohen.
Normally, I'm one for pragmatism and realism, but I have never forgotten listening to Tim Schmidt talking about his venture when he set up the Eden Project and how he went to the National Lottery with everybody's hopes with him, and he was turned down, but he went back to his volunteers and didn't tell them he'd been turned down, and he went again and he was successful. And I agree with Becky, sometimes you have just got to believe and you've just got to do things like this. And so I think on this occasion we've got to be brave, because you don't produce projects like this based on everything being very straightforward, but together we will be able to do it. So let's also not tell the public if it all goes wrong, but why don't we take them with them and tell them why we're doing this, so that at least they have some understanding, they feel they were included in the decision.
Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cohen. I would really support that. And I believe also we talk too much still of the canal. It's a blue-green corridor which brings the stream, the river, the canal and all the lands around it in one big nature and recreation opportunity. And for my own town, Stroud, I see so many possibilities and opportunities, and I went to 2 workshops this week, and also the way even the local college is buying into it and coming up with all these fantastic opportunities for their students. So I feel it goes beyond the canal. Yes, we need to connect it to the national waterways network to really achieve its full potential. But I think it's a marvelous thing what has been achieved to date, and I think it can achieve a lot more with this next tranche of funding. Thank you.
Councillor Stanley and then Councillor Green.
It's just a little thing that I should have picked up before, but I think I better mention it now. On page 74, item 1.1, it says the restoration started in 2006. That's certainly when that grant came through, but there were restoration things happening when I moved in 40 years ago, and we were told it would be finished in 10 years. So it's not quite accurate to say the restoration started in 2006. That's when the grant was received. So the restoration was boosted in 2006, or was received funding in 2000. It's slightly just technically incorrect to say started. Sorry about that. I just didn't spot it before.
Councillor Green.
Thank you. As somebody who grew up on the Gloucester Sharpness Canal and had the river, that was my playground. And you know what? As a child, it was the best childhood. We learned about water safety without lifeguards and everything else. There's so many skills that I've picked up on as a child, just as a result of being on the canal and living by the river. This is so important to so many more people than I think we can actually envisage. You know, we can say how it will help with certain things, but there's all the other unintended consequences that are positive that will come as a result of this, you know, and we are hopefully towards the end of this project now, so I will be supporting this.
Thank you. I'm going to, in the absence of anybody else, I'll give Councillor Caton Hughes wishes to say some words.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for raising your concerns and a rigorous debate. Health and safety, governance, finance, these are kind of key issues. We need to be proactive and ambitious in our goals. But let's remember first how the canal project has already benefited the people of Stroud, like we've just heard. Fantastic. The personal impacts of living around the waterway, the free access to peaceful beauty spots, the length of our district. I've personally enjoyed walking to the Missing Mile and seeing the canal come back to life. The economic benefits, the national interest stirred by the project on our TV screens, combining commercial amenities for future canal users with affordable homes for local people. It does make sound commercial sense to me. Plus, the great collaboration between the project organisations, wildlife bodies, landowners and commercial interests. The environment, stunning Instagram-friendly photo opportunities. The length of the restored sections of the canal, plus innovative projects to protect and attract more wildlife to the area. Fantastic. Sustainable, inclusive tourism, encouraging people across the UK to come and enjoy its facilities and reduce our collective carbon footprint further. The amazing volunteers, such as fundraisers, or for me, the former Lister workers from Dursley, whose engines still power the project today. There are health and well-being benefits for everyone involved, participating, or just enjoying the canal. The completion of this project offers all this and more. The National Lottery don't just invite anyone to bid for multi-million-pound funds. I believe they see genuine cultural benefits for the district and for the UK as a whole too. The hard questions have been asked. about finding these resources for our community and scrutinised in committee and challenged here today. Fantastic. Nothing is guaranteed, but now's the time to look forward to the benefits. So you may have seen in the report that on the 21st of July 1779, a whole ox was roasted at the opening of the canal. Well, I'm hoping it'll be ox, fish, vegetarian, vegan, if we've got anything to do with it. So, fellow members and canal lovers everywhere, it's time to form an orderly queue, be first over the line on opening day, July 21st, 2029. I commend this project to you all. Thank you.
Councillor Turner, follow that.
I won't actually, because it was a very uplifting invitation to us all. I will just touch on some of the points quickly that have been brought up. Just Terry, in terms of that, having a flowchart of decision making, I think it's quite difficult because the lottery could come back anywhere between 0 and 6.4. This is a modular project broken down at the most granular level. So in a sense, we could very quickly build whatever number they come back to in terms of deliverable. But all the way along, it's been a partnership with the lottery. And so ultimately, if they do come back with a revised offer, it will be about us working with them about what they want to see from a revised project. So we will have to wait till then. I completely understand your concern, Steve, about is this going to be the final ask? I think we've all raised concerns about that, and that is why in the papers, if you look, the contingency is done on a line-by-line basis for every single line of spend, and you'll see that some are 25%, some are 5%, some are 10%, and that is the level of granularity we've gone to make sure that we feel it's a robust final ask. But I think that's a very valid question to raise. I'm sorry about the date. Maybe that's the date for the council's involvement in restoration, but we should have made that clearer. And just finally to say thank you, Lucas, for raising the fact that this is a corridor, a nature corridor, and that is really important. The first curlew was seen in the new ponds over the winter, which was really exciting. And it's been really brilliant to see young people engaging with the restoration project. We had a lovely exhibition downstairs recently from seeing young people who've been doing some plein air artwork on the canal with some of our officers. And then I went to Stroud School of Arts summer exhibition, and a number of pieces there were directly inspired by the canal, which was really fantastic to see. It is a brilliant project, and I really hope we can support it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I'm going to move to the vote, again by show of hands. So if you could raise your hand if you wish to support the resolution. All those in favour? And again, could I ask if there is anybody who is voting against? Are there any abstentions? So there is one abstention. So I think that was 38 to 1 abstention. Thank you very much. And given the time, I'm going to suggest now that we have a short adjournment. I'm going to suggest 15 minutes because we've still got a little bit to do, but I think we just need a little bit. It's been quite 5 minutes. I'm going to moderate that to 10. Right. So a 10-minute adjournment, please. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Thank you for coming back so swiftly. We're going to go on to agenda item 10, which is the appointment to committees and political balance. So I'm sure you're very familiar with this, but the council is required to ensure that the membership of its committees is proportionate to the political composition of the council. The political balance has been recalculated and published with the council reports following the results of the 7-ward by-election on Wednesday the 11th of June, when the newly elected councillor joined the Green political group. The proposed changes to committee result in changes for the Development Control Committee only. The Labour group leader has confirmed that the reduction in the seat which has been reallocated to the Green political group. Following interest from 2 different members, it is also requested that the council consider increasing the membership of the Equality, Diversity, Inclusion, Equity and Belonging Working Group by 1, and therefore allowing for 2 nominees to be appointed. This would be to fill in an existing vacant seat, plus the proposed increase of 1. The changes and the nominees are shown on the screen. And can I ask, are there any further nominations or amendments that you wish to make to that? So I see none. And so a proposer, I'm going to ask Councillor Turner to propose and Councillor Braun to second. And again, we are going to proceed to a vote by a show of hands for all of the nominations for the membership of committees. And we'll take those en bloc. So could you raise your hand if you are supporting those nominations? All in favour? Thank you. Are there any voting against? Are there any, excuse me, is there anybody that wishes to abstain? So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 abstentions. And I think that's 33 in favour and 5 against. Thank you very much. I'm now going to go on to agenda item 11, which are the updates to the Constitution. And I'm going to invite Councillor Lindsay Green, who is Chair of the Constitution Working Group, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. This report brings forward proposed amendments to the Constitution as recommended by the Constitution Working Group. You will see from the report that we are proposing amendments to 2 sections of the Constitution. Section 14, Whistleblowing Policy, has been updated by the Counter Fraud and Enforcement Unit, or CFEU, on behalf of all of its partner councils, which includes Stroud District Council. The policy has been to all 6 HR teams and the monitoring officers for consultation and input. At Stroud District Council, the Constitution Working Group considered the policy on the 27th of June. All feedback has been incorporated within the policy. For ease of reference, new additions are indicated in red text and the text to be removed is struck through. In addition to the policy, there is a flow chart for staff to use as a quick reference guide. This is also being updated to include the contact information for the various HR representatives, the CFEU and the statutory officers at each council. There are also a supporting document for those staff that receive whistleblowing referrals to ensure that they are dealt with in the correct way and provide confidence to whistleblowers. The CFEU ensure that annual comms are issued to all staff to promote the documents and raise awareness in this area. Whistleblowing is an essential tool within any organisation, and it is essential that staff feel confident that they can raise any concerns and that matters will be investigated. Section 21, the social media protocol for members, has also been reviewed and updated following consultation with the Corporate Communications Manager, Democratic Services and the Constitution Working Group at the June meeting. The updates reflect the changing landscape of social media and the use of new and emerging communication platforms. Special consideration has been given to protecting members against intimidation and abuse online and preserving and enhancing the Council's good work and reputation. The protocol is a guide for members to help them avoid legal and reputational risks and to communicate safely and effectively with the public. Members can see the proposed amendments as tracked changes in Appendix 4. As the chair of the Constitution Working Group, I would like to recommend the approval of the resolutions as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. First of all, could I ask whether there are any questions on this item?
Just a really minor point on page 143, paragraph 1.1, line 2, it should say the majority of issues.
We have a proposer, Councillor Green, and a seconder, Councillor Braun. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right? May I open it up for debate? Councillor Braun, would you like to say, I beg your pardon. Councillor Kitchen.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to speak a little bit, page 165, the social media and code of conduct for members. I wanted to comment really. Hopefully it's a good policy to aid members, use of social media platforms, etc. I wanted to comment on 6.1 by way of example. And it says there, if you have a Facebook account, which includes your role as a councillor, you should keep this separate from your personal account. Specifically regarding Facebook, these separate councillor accounts have to be tagged as both public and political. And it's clear that Facebook leveraged this information to inject misinformation, hate and soft porn, amongst other things, into these timelines. We've all seen it. It's horrendous. And I thought that it was just male councillors that are subjected to it, but female councillors are too. It threatens well-being and can lead to mental health issues. And I closed my Facebook councillor account as a result of this. I really don't want to wade through it every day. Facebook generates billions of pounds in the UK and it offshores its profits to avoid UK tax. So when this policy is reviewed, I'd like to see these concerns spelt out for new councillors in particular. There are far better alternatives. Mastodon, for example, federated networks of safer places without adverts, without algorithms, without outrage. And I implore the council to explore these alternatives, especially to help new councillors and indeed residents as well who don't want to engage with US big tech. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kitchen. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Councillor Braun, do you wish to say anything as a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Just like to reflect that we had a very good discussion at the Constitution Working Group that Lindsay chairs, and I really encourage everyone to support this section and the documents that are being asked to approve this evening. They've had a thorough review and I think are much improved. Thank you.
Councillor Green, do you want to say anything? Thank you. So I'm going to move to the vote. So again, by show of hands, could all of those in favour please raise your hand? Is there anybody who is voting against? Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much. That has been passed unanimously. Thank you. Now I'm going to go on to agenda item 12, which is the designation of a Section 151 officer. And I'm going to invite the Chief Executive, Cathy O'Leary, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. This report is occasioned by the consequence of the departure of Andrew Cummings in September. You're probably aware that the council needs to designate one of its officers as the Section 151 officer. That's Section 151 of the 1972 Local Government Act. It's effectively our chief financial officer. It carries with it quite a degree of personal responsibility because it's about making sure that the council sets balanced budgets. It's not necessarily doing the bidding of the council. It does carry a lot of personal responsibility as one of the three statutory officers of the council. The other two being myself as head of paid service and the monitoring officer, Alice McAlpine. It's quite a trusted relationship as well, that golden triangle, you've often heard it referred to as that. And I suppose I'm really pleased to be able to say that in my entire time as Chief Executive here at Stroud District Council, I've been very well served by Andrew Cummings as that Section 151 officer. We need to designate somebody else. You'll see from the report that I'm very keen on promoting the internal talent that we have in this organisation because we do have a number of very talented officers. And there's a reason for me, if you like, splitting out this role from the Strategic Director of Resources. If you like, it's been a little bit of an accident that Andrew has got 3 different badges. He has always been the Section 151 officer, but more recently acquired the Strategic Director of Resources role, which he was keen to do alongside that. But that has been a big ask of Andrew. And then we've layered on top of that Deputy Chief Executive as well, which has been a particular responsibility working to me. So the reason for thinking about it in this way at the moment and not going out directly for a new Strategic Director of Resources and saying that also needs to be the Section 151 officer is because actually at the moment I'm quite concerned about the capacity of the strategic leadership team, and I would like to increase the capacity of the team. And I know how much time in the run-up to local government reorganisation is going to need to be spent on making sure that we are financially sound in the remaining time that we have left, and that whatever we're taking forward into a new council structure is going to be sustainable for those new councils. We have that responsibility, as I said earlier, to our communities. You will know Lucy Clothier. You will know how very talented she is as our Deputy Section 151 officer, and you will know that I have utmost trust in Lucy, which is extremely important for me and for that golden triangle relationship in our strategic leadership team. The Section 151 officer would of course be part of that strategic leadership team, as is the monitoring officer, as are all the directors of the council. I have had a conversation with Lucy, I have offered her the role, and I'm seeking your support for that because it is technically council that needs to designate that role, which we can do to an existing officer of the council. So really I'm asking for your support to do this, and I think I'm probably quite confident in asking that because I think you all share my view of Lucy Clothier. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions, and obviously that you might want to have a debate as well, but thank you.
And in fact, are there any questions? I see none, Cathy. The resolution is that this council resolves to designate Lucy Clothier as the Section 151 officer from the 15th of September 2025 on an ongoing basis. And I think we have Councillor Turner to propose it and Councillor Hoffman to second it. Do you wish to reserve the right to speak at a later, or do you want to speak now? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I'm very happy to support this recommendation, and very pleased indeed that the Council's been able to offer this opportunity to Lucy and to somebody who is very high performing and well qualified to do the job. And I think we will be in very safe hands as Andrew rides off into the sunset. And I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you, Lucy.
Turner.
Yeah, I don't want to embarrass Andrew again, but I think it is in testament to Andrew that he's given Lucy the space, so we already know how brilliant Lucy is. So very much welcome this appointment. Thanks.
So I'm just going to move to the vote by show of hands. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Is anybody who wishes to vote against? Are there any abstentions? Unanimously supported, and you're quite right, Chief Executive. And congratulations to Lucy, who is present in the chamber. Welcome aboard. Thank you. Now going on to item 13, which is devolution, strategic authority options. And again, I'm going to invite, I think it might be a dual gig from the Chief Executive and Councillor Turner. So I'm not sure who's going to introduce it. The Chief Executive is going to introduce it.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for your support for the last report. I'm very much looking forward to welcoming Lucy Clothier into the strategic leadership team of the Council, gutted as we all are that we're losing Andrew from it. This report is really to make sure that the leader of the council and I, but particularly the leader of the council, has a mandate from this council to express a view about strategic authority options in the run-up to devolution and local government reorganisation. If you cast your mind back to March, when we had an extraordinary council meeting and just one report on the agenda. In that report, we set out what we were going to put to government as a united group of 7 councils in Gloucestershire, and that was the 3 strategic authority options that we've currently been working on, and also then 3 different models for local government reorganisation in the county. So it's the first of those that I want to come back to today, the strategic authority options. You'll recall from the report, and you can see that I've set them out again here, there are 3 different options that we put to government when we responded in March. So the first of those was joining the West of England Combined Authority to the south of us. The second was creating a new strategic authority by combining Gloucestershire with Worcestershire and Herefordshire to the north. And the third option would be to create a new strategic authority looking east to Swindon and Oxfordshire. You'll know that there are a number of county-wide work streams. One of those work streams is looking specifically at the strategic authority options that we put out on the table. And we agreed some criteria to assess which of those was going to be the best fit for Gloucestershire. You'll see those are set out in paragraph 2.5, and they cover matters such as economic geography, the economic case, the political identity and fit, the ease of implementation, and government has a lot to do with that, public sector alignment, and also then the potential for public service reform. We're minded to add a further criteria to that, and that will be around the cultural fit, which I think we probably feel quite strongly about because, of course, the first of those options is the only one that would keep Gloucestershire in the southwest of the country. You'll see from the report that I'm setting out the reporting so far that we've got from that strategic combined authority work stream, and we've looked at the economic analysis and we've looked at the political identity and fit. So you can see the headline responses from those, and you will see that the conclusions of those are very much pointing us towards WECA, the West of England Combined Authority. The reason why we're asking for your support for expressing that view on behalf of Stroud District Council just now is that there has been a little bit of an awakening with the change of leadership at the County Council that we need to take quite seriously what the Minister set out in a letter to us, which is that we need to state our local ambition to join WECA if the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government is going to make that happen. So we have been asked, or leaders have been asked to state that preference. And of course, Councillor Turner is quite right. We're in a committee system and she needs that mandate from you to be able to express that view to the county, so that county can then express that view to the West of England Combined Authority and to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, so that we can make those overtures. I hope that gives you a platform to speak from there, Councillor Turner, but that's as much as I'd like to say, but I'm really happy to answer any technical questions around that. You may have political questions for Councillor Turner, but we'd be happy to take those questions. Thank you.
So we have a proposer, Councillor Turner, and a seconder, Councillor Hoffman. Councillor Hoffman, do you want to reserve your right to speak later? Councillor Turner, would you wish to propose and set out the report?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not actually going to add a great deal to what Kathy's already said because I'm conscious of time, but I just really wanted to say that both the economic and the political analysis are really strong for us, that WECA is the right way to look. It's increasingly clear with every meeting with Jim McMahon that we go to that we are really being looked to demonstrate our political ambition if that's what we want to do. This is the window to do that. Otherwise, we might get bundled up into whoever's left over at the end of the map, and that's not where we want to be. We want to be actively championing a solution that works well for us. So happy to take any questions you may have, but really welcome the clear analysis that has been done so far and would really welcome your mandate to continue pushing for WECA. Thank you.
So first of all, are there any questions? No, there are no questions. So I'm going to read out the resolution. This council resolves to note the work underway across Gloucestershire through the Strategic Authority Joint Work Stream to carry out an appraisal of the three options for forming or joining a strategic authority, and B, to delegate authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of the Council to express a preference for joining the West of England Combined Authority, WECA, and to continue working on all three options until it becomes clear which option the government requires Gloucestershire to follow. And I'm now going to open it up for debate. Is anybody that wishes to contribute to the debate? Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks very much, Kathy, for that update. I'm really heartened that you're minded to add culture. I think culture is, as you rightly noted, culture is a really, really important and strong lever in this piece of work. And I think for me, and I think I share this with other people, there is no other place that we could possibly culturally fit comfortably other than WECA. You know, the others just don't make any sense. It would be very uncomfortable for us to try to shoehorn ourselves in. So I wholeheartedly support that proposal to include culture and to support our joining WECA. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I support this motion. I just wanted to make an observation, which is that if we do approve this, then this has significant implications for making the decision about what a unitary authority looks like. So out of the three possible unitary options, only one of them really makes sense if we were to go to WECA now in light of this.
Councillor Braun. I beg your pardon. Sorry, you can sit down. I beg you. So, Councillor Watson first, and then Councillor Braun. Did you not? You didn't want to speak. Councillor Watson, do go ahead.
Doesn't really matter which order. I support the report. I agree with the comparisons, but I feel the need every time I see the word devolution and strategic authority that I want to express my disappointment that we are being forced down this route when it doesn't feel, from my perspective, that it's any form of devolution. It feels like centralisation. So I won't take any more time, but I'm afraid I'm probably going to say that every time we have to discuss this issue. Thank you.
Am I confused? Did you want to speak, Councillor Braun? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I think to respond to Councillor Brown's comments, it could be possible for one Gloucestershire Council or two Gloucestershire Unitary Councils to join WECA. There's no restriction. We're just expressing an ambition as Gloucestershire authorities. And I think from our perspective of Stroud, as Stroud District Council, it really obviously makes sense because we're a close neighbour. But I think thinking it through from a wider perspective across the entire county, it also makes sense. And I know since this process was first announced, we identified that it was important to have ambition for the strategic authority and that there were numerous different reasons why we would want to align. And it's something I think as a council we have all been supporting from the beginning. So I'm really pleased to see the paper and I hope everyone will support it because that will enable other councils to make this important decision. It seems that it's going to be much easier for the government to arrange councils into new authorities than to find a way for new unitary authorities to join existing combined authorities. So we really do need to push our case, I think, as Councillor Turner and the Chief Executive has mentioned. So some of the work that we've done so far was thinking about the strong reasons why Gloucestershire should join the combined authority. This is about staying connected to our regional capital in Bristol. It's about the strong economic and strategic ties that we have with the West of England combined authority areas, and also, as mentioned already, about our identity and connections within the South West. We already have very strong relationships with the councils across the WECA area, South Gloucestershire, Bristol City Council and Bath and North East Somerset councils. That extends from skills and training across our colleges and universities to collaboration on major economic development projects through the former Western Gateway, Pan-Regional Partnership and work on strategic planning and transport infrastructure to unlock housing development. So Gloucestershire's already part of the West of England sub-national transport body, which covered a wider Western Gateway area, and that bridges the gap between government and local authorities to improve transport, so we're all already connected on that front. We have long-established partnerships for strategic planning and infrastructure with West of England Combined Authority partners, and that links to our strategic housing growth in Gloucestershire and our next local plan as well. And our strong road and rail links to Bristol have been core to that further development. So the economic and infrastructure connections are just reflecting the alignment of our economic sectors, and that's referred to in the paper in relation to cybersecurity, advanced engineering and green technology. It relates also to the health services, and those links between Gloucestershire and the WECA area will only be strengthened when the ICB merges with the ICBs covering the Bristol area. It relates also to the work that we link to the South West Net Zero Hub, which is hosted by WECA, and a whole range of other projects which we work closely with them on. I think the South West regional identity is something that is more of a heart choice than a head choice, but it certainly feels important to me, it feels important to our local communities, and for those of us who live in the south of the district, who are literally on the border of the West of England Combined Authority and South Gloucestershire, just being able to have basic discussions about bus services will be so much simpler. The government have been very much focused on functional economic areas, and I think while we do have many people who commute to Oxfordshire, Swindon, Hereford and Worcestershire, that in no way compares with the number of people who work in Bristol and similarly who maybe work in Gloucestershire for some of our big employers but happen to live in Bristol. So that's going to be really important as well. And then finally, just to reflect on the natural geography and challenges, opportunities in some ways that we share with that whole region. We've got to think about the Severn Estuary, the connections that we have with Wales and our partners, which will only grow and extend over the coming years. So we have challenges around fluvial flood risk, we have protection of the nature and wildlife along the Severn, and I think for all those multiple reasons, it's a very strong choice that we're going to be making this evening in favour of West of England Combined Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braun. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Councillor Hoffman, would you like to speak?
Thank you. Yes, so I'm very pleased to see this come to Council. And I'm very pleased that we are actually putting our hand up and saying this is what we want. There's obviously all the data and all the benefits that Councillor Braun has mentioned, which are very clear. But also I believe that the majority, if not all of us in this room, do feel that WECA is our cultural fit. So I am very pleased to be voting for this. Thank you.
Councillor Turner, do you want to sum up?
Just to say, I wanted to thank Kathy actually, because she and I sort of came up with the idea of this paper during one of the leadership meetings a couple of days before the publication deadline. So Kathy turned this around in absolute record speed, because we realised there was this window, not just to demonstrate our own ambition around WECA, but to show some leadership for the other councils, a way that it could be demonstrated. So thank you, Kathy. Also, it was good to hear this week that the new leader at the County Council has met with the Mayor of WECA, so discussions are picking back up again post-election, and, you know, positive discussions. So hopefully, if we can get the ambition demonstrated across all of the councils, then we can start to move that forward. So I'd be very grateful for your support for this mandate tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'm going to move to the vote. So again, by show of hands, all those in favour of this resolution? Thank you. All those against? Are there any abstentions? No. So we have passed that unanimously. And again, thanks to all of the effort from the officers and from the Chief Exec. So we now move on to item 14, notice of motion. We get to the exciting bit of the agenda. This is, I see Councillor Cook.
Can I make a request of the Chamber that we have a very quick 5-minute, actually can't have a very quick it's just 5 minutes, a 5-minute adjournment, so that we can get our act together, because there's been some going forward on this, and I appreciate that opportunity to do that.
Can I just ask and just check that the meeting is is happy with that? So just again, a quick show of hands. Are you happy for a 5-minute adjournment? Could you put your, that's really helpful. So 5 minutes, so we come back here at 9:45. Thank you. So we are now on to the motion. I'm going to take this very slowly, partly because we haven't done a motion for quite a long time. So, we all need to take this on a steady basis. And if anybody is unclear at all about what we're doing, please raise your hand, and because I don't want us to be kind of bamboozling our way through this if people don't really understand what we're doing. Okay, so first of all, I am going to ask Councillor Braun to present the motion. We have to get the motion onto the table first of all. So, Councillor Braun, can you present the motion as it is set out on the screen? I'm happy to read it if that's helpful. Should I read it out? Would that be a helpful thing, or no? I'll just present the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to be bringing a motion to you this evening on the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which is currently going through Parliament, and it's very timely as it was being debated by the House of Lords today. I hope you will join me in calling for Part 3 of the bill to be withdrawn, given the threat it poses to development, to the planning system, and to our natural environment. There are some positive elements to the bill, for example, the reintroduction of strategic planning, but it does pose a real threat to effective planning that we need to see happening in order to address the housing affordability crisis, and also to nature protection, and that's what I'm going to focus on in my opening speech. Part 3 of the bill has two key requirements. It introduces the idea of environmental delivery plans, or EDPs, which would be created by Natural England and approved by the Secretary of State. They'd be tailored to specific types of development in designated areas, and they'd outline conservation measures that needed to be mitigated in order to mitigate environmental harm. They would include a charging schedule for developers to pay a nature restoration levy. And this nature restoration levy would enable developers to pay into the fund instead of directly mitigating impacts, and any funds would be used by Natural England to implement the conservation measures outlined in environmental delivery plans. So far, so good. But the main concerns with this bill is that it would mean a regression in environmental law and weaken our key natural environmental principles of polluter pays and the precautionary principle, which emphasises preventing irreversible harm. So the bill would replace existing protections with a pay-to-pollute model, and it would undermine the mitigation hierarchy, which prioritises avoiding harm before offsetting it. In Stroud District, the protection available to the Severn Estuary, Cotswold Beechwoods and Rodborough Common as special areas of conservation could potentially be lost. There would also be huge gaps in accountability, as there'd be no legal obligation for Natural England to actually deliver the promised outcomes in the EDPs, or even for developers to pay, only to commit to pay. And this offset scheme would have very little integrity, because there would be no requirement for the payments to correspond to the mitigations that needed to happen. And there would be no enforcement mechanisms if the EDPs fail. The bill would also be bad for developers, creating uncertainty and greater risk in the market and holding back future developments. It would undermine biodiversity offsetting schemes, redirecting investment away from local, tailored solutions. Many small companies could suffer if this happens, including the Gloucestershire Nature and Climate Fund, the GNCF, which our council and all other local authorities in Gloucestershire have financially supported to set up. There is no denying the scale of the housing crisis, but we need a planning system that provides certainty for developers, protections for nature, and crucially, public trust and confidence. Far from being a win-win for nature and for development, this is currently classified as the worst of all worlds by those who've looked at it. And this motion calls for Part 3 of the bill to be scrapped. The organisations campaigning to scrap Part 3 of the bill include the Town and Country Planning Association, the Green Construction Board and the UK Green Building Council. Their joint statement with environmental organisations in May stated that half measures or weak compromises will not address the fundamental flaws in Part 3. A genuine solution must start with proper consultation, grounded in science, transparency and collaboration with those who understand both development and environmental delivery. We can get Britain building again and deliver nature recovery, but it will require a more thoughtful approach. The Conservative Environmental Network has also campaigned against Part 3 of the bill. They say, if we are serious about reversing biodiversity loss, we must harness the full power of the market to do so. That means creating conditions where private investment can flow into nature recovery, not as an act of charity, but as a rational, profitable enterprise. They add that the Planning and Infrastructure Bill threatens to undermine the very market mechanisms that are starting to make private investment in nature viable. The whole process for bringing forward this bill was rushed and without the necessary evidence base. Due to a total lack of prior consultation, the fundamental concerns about the process with EDPs and a pay-to-pollute nature restoration levy have not been addressed. Legal advice from the Office for Environmental Protection was not even considered when the bill was drafted. In its letter of advice to the government, the Office for Environmental Protection warns that the current version of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill is a regression on existing environmental protections, and it goes on to make a series of recommendations as to how the bill can be changed. Part 3 of this bill is opposed by planning, development and nature interests. It won't help us build more houses, address the housing affordability crisis, and it would certainly reduce the level of environmental protections provided under the law. Even our trading partners, including the European Union, have flagged concerns about it failing to provide the level playing field in terms of development and investment that we agreed when we left the European Union. It's putting at risk our communities and the wildlife and nature upon which we depend in terms of air, land and water. And I ask everyone to support the motion this evening. Thank you.
And thank you, Councillor Braun. I beg your pardon. First of all, are there any questions that members have? Councillor Simkis.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Catherine. And I don't disagree that environmental protection, enhancement, mitigation is incredibly important. I am concerned about the fact that trying to create these enhancements on a piecemeal basis for developers creates massive challenge. A strategic approach is often sometimes better because it provides linkages into different biodiversity areas. And as you acknowledge, we've got the Beechwoods, we've got the Severn Estuary, and we've got the Robber Common SAC, where we have those strategic projects and they work really well. So I suppose my concern is that whilst I appreciate and accept that perhaps that this part doesn't go as far as it should, rather than simply opposing it, could we be perhaps suggesting what other measures members would like to see so that it's more of a proactive response?
Thank you, Councillor Simkis. It's a really good question. And I suppose from my approach, it would always start from the point of how can we make this better? But actually listening to the experts, those people who have followed the parliamentary stages through the House of Commons, who've been lobbying MPs, who've been talking to various experts from the building sectors and others, they have put forward amendments which have all been rejected by the government. And those amendments, in any case, didn't address some of the fundamental flaws with the issue. I think this problem stems down to the fact that proper process hasn't been followed. In this case, if the government had published a consultation and a draft bill before bringing forward the bill, then any issues and concerns could have been ironed out, and those important stakeholders who understand what could work for developers and what could work for the natural environment would have had the opportunity to correct some of these fundamental flaws. But as I understand, we just need to start from a blank page here.
Councillor Moore.
Hi, thanks. It's just a point of information, really. Looking at point 1 of the motion, is it actually possible for members to ask the Chief Exec to write a political letter? Should it not be the Leader of the Council who writes? And on point 2, it says ask our District 3 MPs. Who's asking them? Is that the Chief Exec or is that the Leader or who?
With the Chair's permission, I'll answer that question. In a committee system, the Council has to ask the Chief Executive to do these things and cannot delegate that to a member. So it is the Chief Executive that needs to do that. I'm employed to do the bidding of the Council, so it's not a political thing for me, if that makes sense.
Doesn't The only thing I was thinking of,
Could you stand,
Oh,
Councillor?
sorry. There was the thing recently where a Reform leader of a council asked the chief exec to take down a pride flag outside the building, and they said, no, that's not for you to decide because it's a political thing.
There are several different models of local government governance. We are in a committee system. I believe that council was in a leader cabinet model, but I think the chief executive was probably referring to the fact that it's legislation that dictates such things. It's not a political point of view.
So are there any other questions? Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Matthews, I didn't see you.
Thank you. I have a lot of sympathies with a number of the issues that you've raised, but it just feels too late. It's gone through, and I know it's not too late, it has to come back to the House of Commons, but this bill has gone through the House of Commons, it's been voted on with amendments 3 times, and every time, and I accept that there may have been political pressure, every time it's been passed by MPs' votes, and it's now in the House of Lords at the committee stage, and it will come back in for final ratification. But my question is, why on earth did you not raise this, propose it as a motion months ago, when there might have been a better chance for it to have an effect?
The bill was only published in March. The environmental NGO started to analyse it in April. This has been happening very quickly at our council in May. We only take the AGM items. We don't have an opportunity to debate substantive motions. You might have seen from an article, I think, in The Guardian today and some other papers, the government is very actively lobbying the NGOs, environmental NGOs. This process of making the new legislation is not at all finished. It's a very active process, and I think from the briefings that I've read from all the stakeholders involved, they see it going on through into the autumn.
Thank you. Just before I read out the resolution, we've come to 10 o'clock when I have to formally ask the meeting whether you wish to keep sitting and proceed. So could I again have a show of hands as to whether or not you wish to continue? I'm sorry for that to curtail the debate, but it's the rules that we've set ourselves. So we're not going to be able to finish this debate in the next minute. So could all those who are in favour of continuing please raise their hands? Can we please raise your hands very high, please?
This is what I'm going to say, the exempt items time critical.
Yeah.
The exempt items time critical.
Can I just say, and I hesitate to influence members, but the exempt item, which is after this agenda item, is actually time critical. So I think, and whether that will affect your decision, I don't know, but it's just a fact. So again, have you been able to count? Or can you put your hands up again, please? Oh, you can put your hands down. Sorry. Oh, that is a form of torture at the end of this evening's meeting. There are 25 for, or any 13 against, or I haven't counted abstentions, but so we are agreed, and there is a majority for us to continue. So I am now going to read out the motion as published. So this council resolves to 1, request the Chief Executive of the Council to write to the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, relevant Secretaries of State, as well as local MPs, expressing the concerns in the motion below and calling for the withdrawal of Part 3 of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. 2, to ask our district 3 MPs, Dr Simon Ofer MP, Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown MP and Dr Ros Savage MP, to oppose measures in Part 3 of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, and should these remain in the bill, to vote against at final reading. And 3, share this resolution with neighbouring councils, local civic groups, nature organisations and the local press to encourage wider opposition and coordinated advocacy. And 4, adopt Gloucestershire's local nature recovery strategy as soon as it is available and in such a way as to become a material consideration in planning decision making. So we have a proposer, Councillor Braun, and I think we have a seconder, Councillor Turner. Do you wish to speak at this stage, Councillor Turner? Or do you want to reserve your right? I'm aware that there are amendments to this motion. So at this stage, I am going to invite Councillor Hoffman. Oh, sorry, Councillor Braun, I beg your pardon. Councillor Braun, would you like to speak to this motion?
Yes, please, Chair. I would like to speak to this motion. So I would like to propose an additional small amendment to the one on the screen, actually. Under paragraph 1, it says the concerns in the motion below, and perhaps we could replace the word below with on pages 189 to 192 of the document pack. So just to clarify exactly the information that we're talking about. And on the second paragraph, I'd like to delete the final wording to reflect that there might not be a vote for MPs at final reading, because it depends on the process that follows the debate in the House of Lords, which may be a negotiation with the people leading the bill from the House of Commons. But the MPs will continue to have influence through their parliamentary parties on the position that is taken. So I think paragraph 2 stands, but without reference to a vote at final reading. And then finally, I'd like to reference the importance of the Gloucestershire Local Nature Recovery Strategy, and that should be brought to full council as well as a committee. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
I'll just raise a point of order. I'm not sure procedurally if a proposer and a seconder can actually propose an amendment to their own motion in the first place.
Councillor Cook, under Rule 13.8 of the Constitution, yes, they're able to bring an amendment to their own motion.
Stand corrected.
We will now put the alterations individually to the meeting to see whether they're accepted.
Yeah. I was going to say, yes, it is now up to the meeting to confirm that they are content for these amendments to be discussed. And again, just by no debate, just a show of hands. Please, could you... That's right, isn't it?
Yes, Chair, but I suggest that we take the 2 amendments separately.
Okay. So in fact, the 3 amendments.
Sorry,
3 amendments. So 3 amendments. We're going to take them separately. So in paragraph 1, the addition of pages 189 to 192. Could I have a show of hands that the meeting is content to accept those as an amendment? Please raise your hand. All those against? None. So again, I just want to confirm this vote isn't indicating approval. It's just consent for the amendments to be lodged. So I hope that clarifies it. So on paragraph 2, it involves deletion of the final few words, and should these remain in the bill, to vote against at final reading. Could I have a show of hands, all those in favour of that deletion? That is accepted. And then on paragraph 4, to the amendment to add words to include bringing it to full council. Again, could I see a vote of hands as whether that is accepted by the meeting? And I think right. Okay. So the motion, as it stands, is at the moment for debate is as amended on the screen. I understand that there is no other amendment coming. Sorry, I'm out of date in the conversation. So just forgive me if I ask it. There is no. Okay. So I'm going to ask formally for Councillor Braun to speak to the amended motion.
Already said enough about this Planning and Infrastructure Bill Part 3, so I would just encourage everyone to support the motion.
Turner, do you want to speak now or do you want to reserve your position?
I'll reserve, please.
Okay, so I'm going to open up this motion for debate by any other members. Are there any other members who wish to speak? Councillor Hoffman, Councillor Hughes. If you can keep your hands up and I'll try and... So, Hoffman, Hughes, Cook, Dutton.
Okay.
Back them down. Right. And Councillor Hughes. Yeah, both Councillor Hughes. Yeah, okay. I've got a little list, but and I may have missed people out as I've gone around the room, so I won't miss you out in the debate. So if I don't call you, I'll be asking all the time whether there's anybody else that wants to speak. So at the moment, I've got Councillor Hoffman who wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that the government is actually considering changes after being petitioned, and the House of Lords has recommended, or things have been brought up in committee. So I understand that they are already considering changes. But I would just like to say that we recognise that the bill will bring huge benefits in enabling much needed homes to be built, removing many of the existing barriers. The fact that 1.4 million homes remains unbuilt, even though they have planning permission, shows how much the planning system needs reform. Piecemeal environmental protections don't always give the best value for money or actual protection of a species or habitat. If we are going to have any chance of fighting climate change or mitigating in favour of the natural world, then we need strategic oversight, not local sticking plasters. However, we do recognise that Part 3 may have potential risks and some uncertainty, and I urge the government to ensure that the environmental development plans are implemented in a way that is locally accountable, adequately funded, and do not undermine existing environmental protections. We want to see environmental development plans that are effective and result in meaningful actions. Thank you.
Can I ask Councillor Bob Hughes, please?
Well, last week was the 40th anniversary of the release of the film Back to the Future, and I think the Greens must have seen this as being a documentary about time travel being possible, because this motion is way too late. I get the point that you were making there, Councillor Braun, but honestly, you've rushed it, you're amending it at the last minute. Paragraph 2 is so vague. Oppose measures in Part 3. This is just grandstanding. It's just political grandstanding. I believe this bill is necessary and essentially sound. I understand the concerns being voiced by many, but it's all speculation based on the worst interpretation of the flexibility in there, the possibility that there might be Henry VIII clause called in, the extremism about what might happen if and all that. It's no certainty in there. And there are safeguards in the bill. The government have guaranteed that environmental protections will not be diminished. We need to move forward quickly. I'm confident that as we speak in the House of Lords, there are amendments going through that will make that Part 3 acceptable and will work better. And here's two examples, perhaps, of where it would have improved matters. Let's take the famous £100 million HS2 back tunnel. That happened because no one organisation took responsibility for a decision. Everybody was being super cautious. They were playing safe by asking for the most extreme mitigation. And there were far better, cheaper alternatives that would have been more likely to have been implemented if a sound EDP had been in place. The second thing I want to talk about, which I think you touched on, Councillor Stinkis, there, which is about local mitigation is usually preferable, but we've found that developers found often the cheapest and most inadequate way to do this. So, such as creating a local wildflower meadow in the estate, which very quickly turned into a dog walking park for the residents because they need that space. And so you've lost that environmental gain through that. There's no long-term management to this, and it quickly turns into something that's not good. Having a central fund allows larger scale joined up mitigation, and we know that joined up mitigation is way more successful. We can trust Labour on this. Our environmental record is sound. It shows in the last year how committed we are to saving the environment. The GB Energy, cutting costs, improving energy security, boosting renewables, allowing onshore wind farms. I mean, under the last year of the Tory government, Ukraine built more onshore windmills than Britain did, and they were in the middle of a war, for goodness sake, you know. We're reintroducing beavers. We're banning the bee-killing pesticides. We've planted millions more trees than have been planted in the last 20 years. Ratified the High Seas Treaty. And what about the Greens in Parliament? Well, co-leader Adrian Ramsey is opposing plans to bring offshore electricity from the North Sea because the power lines go over his constituency. What a hypocrite. It's almost as embarrassing as the days, those heady days when you had David Icke as your spokesperson. Actually, no, nothing could be as bad as having when the days you had David Icke there. As a result of 14 years of incompetent government from the Tories, people are living in poverty, in crowded homes, with few job prospects and no dignity. We desperately need this bill to more quickly build more homes, schools, factories, battery farms, and create more green jobs. It's a middle-class luxury to ignore all these needs. The Brazilian activist Chico Mendes famously said that environmentalism without class struggle is just gardening. I hate to say it, I respect you all, I love you dearly, but right now, with your grandstanding, you're just gardening.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I ask Councillor Edmonds? Councillor Edmonds.
Yeah, we have a responsibility to protect the most important, the rarest and most in need habitats like chalk streams, ancient woods, peat bogs. These jewels in the crown are our ecological heritage that have their protections weakened in this bill. These are irreplaceable habitats which by their very nature cannot be created anywhere else. There are more than 5,000 of the country's most sensitive, rare and protected natural habitats that are at risk of being destroyed by development through this bill. Yes, we need to strengthen the role of neighbourhood plans at a time when government are saying, you know, we're going to abandon new neighbourhood plans. Giving local people opportunities to demand more affordable and social homes that people actually need, and listening to them when they raise concerns about their threats to nature and green spaces. We all need nature in our backyards. Any commitments required of developers to restore and improve nature will not be guaranteed to benefit the communities who have lost their local natural spaces. Compensation could take place miles away, even in another county. So, you know, this legislation, I fear, will weaken the important habitat regulations which we have helped to effectively protect wildlife and wild spaces for decades. And in doing so, the bill risks stripping away vital protections without clear requirements on developers to deliver the nature restoration needed to preserve these precious landscapes. This also comes at a time when, yes, you mentioned about certain things that the government are doing, but there's also a lot of rowing back on nature, the climate and nature bill being pushed back, and also in the backdrop of a Treasury squeeze on farming budgets that are supporting nature restoration. So yeah, but I'll be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. I'm going to call Councillor Fenton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll also be supporting this motion tonight. One of the aspects of the planning and infrastructure bill that hasn't been on the agenda so far this evening is the fact that it centralises planning decisions. It takes them away from us at a local level. And that's really problematic. Already on planning committee, on DCC, we're having to make decisions where our wrists are tied, where we're unable to take on board the concerns of our local residents. The parish councils and the town councils come to planning committee and they tell us of their concerns. And sometimes we have no choice but to basically wash our hands of them. And that cannot be right. Just this week, we had a situation where Cam Parish Council came to DCC and told us of their concerns about the new development that's proposed for Cam West. And our hands were tied because of the motorway junctions not being upgraded, because of a local plan being not yet accepted by the inspectorate, we can't make a decision on the application that the developers submitted to us in 2021. That is 4 years ago. For 4 years, their application has been on the desk and we've been unable to action it, unable to make a decision. And then, as a consequence, the developers are now taking that application to appeal, where we no longer have a say. Stroud District Council will no longer have a say in the application about Cam West. Now, that is a horrific situation for us to be in. The very best we could do on Tuesday evening was to forward those concerns that Cam Parish Council had outlined to us and say that we would push them forward to the inspectorate. But we're essentially powerless, and that can't be right. And the planning and infrastructure bill, as I understand it, will only centralise planning decisions more and take them away from us at both parish and town council level and at district council level. And for all those reasons, I ask that you also consider supporting this motion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fenton. Can I call on Councillor Cook?
Thank you, Chair. These are not easy issues because we're balancing one thing against another. And Councillor Edmonds, I do take your point that we have a responsibility to look after our nature and biodiversity. But we frankly have a responsibility to see that children are properly housed. There are 165,000 children in England who are in temporary accommodation. And a lot of that is down to the length of time and the length of time that it takes to get planning through, all the places that are put in place. Anecdotally, we've even heard of people who are digging ponds to attract newts so they can actually hold up the whole process. Now, that to me is equally wrong. Does that make, am I making sense? Because I think that my political point here is the balance here between nature and the balance between housing. And it's that thing. And I agree that this may not be the most ideal way of doing it, but we are having to move more quickly on planning because otherwise we're going to see more increase. Because that 165,000 increase was a 14% increase on the last year. And it's still going up. And that to me is the issue here, because what this bill is looking at is housing and getting it through as quickly as possible. And I know people are going to say that we need to have local people and no local understanding. I get that. And there's a lot of local people who've got strong voices in the area. But what about the people who haven't got any homes? Where's their say in this? So basically what I'm saying is that what this infrastructure bill is doing is actually looking to release more housing for people. And I know it may come as a cost. And I totally accept that. But I just feel that balance in terms of this motion is not correct. So I won't be supporting it. And the motion itself, can I just say, it doesn't make sense. Point 4. Adopt Gloucestershire's local nature recovery strategy to include bringing it to full council as soon as it's available in such a way to become a material consideration of planning decision making. Are we adopting it? Because that's what it says we're doing. We're adopting that plan and then we're going to take it to council. What's the point in bringing it to council if we're going to adopt it already? I just don't understand it. The final point there about ask our 3 MPs, and I think I take up Bob's point, that there is already in the House of Lords changes being made which we understand that the government are going to accept as they go through. My issue with this motion as it stands is it's attempting to chop off the entire part of the bill, rather than look to constructively amend it to make it work, to be able to look after those children that are unhoused, that are homeless, as well as look after nature. And that I see, and what I'm seeing here is basically the balance that's required. We need to see this amended. I've got no problems with that. What this motion does is say, get rid of it. And that to me is just not responsible.
Thank you. Can I call on Councillor Oldham?
Thank you, Chair. I would say first a little plea. You could call on the government to improve the bill for nature, or you could say that climate justice and social justice are two sides of the same coin and the bill is fulfilling that. Or you could say we need housing over nature, but maybe not all three. I just wanted now to bring in the historical and heritage perspective. Don't know if you know, but in this district, we have one of the 6 ancient woodlands in this country that is mentioned in the Domesday Book. The tenant-in-chief was this guy called King William. Under this bill, the proposed system of NRF does put sites like this in danger because they're irreplaceable and they're no longer protected. This is the Nature Restoration Fund, or levy, that developers can pay into via this one-off levy in order to account for the damage they may inflict on wildlife and nature. Mitigations for sites that we've heard already are delivered elsewhere, or maybe not even at all. There's no detail on this and no guarantees. So I'd encourage you to visit in my colleague, Councillor Hindsight and Councillor Godfrey's ward, Stanley Wood, a wood that's so old that it was in the Domesday Book, and perhaps take your friends and your kids and your grandkids, or use the sonorous acoustics of the wood to recite a bit of poem that was written at the same time as this wood was being recorded. What yardega in yardagum, etc. But really, I would like you to consider the consequences of this bill, because under this bill, this and other ancient woodlands like it would lose all protection. It's only with strong historical roots that we can move forward into a hopeful and happy future. So I'll be supporting this motion, and I urge others to as well. Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Caton Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Perfection is the enemy of the good. We have 3 public crises in this country: a climate crisis, a housing crisis, as we've heard, a cost of living crisis. They're interconnected, and to borrow a phrase, they require joined up action, and not pitting one group against another, not prioritising. I know people say to me, some of my dear friends say to me, you know, ecology is everything. But if you're a child without a home is everything. Stability is everything. Access to school is everything. And we can't artificially separate these issues. It may not be comfortable for us to say that, but I'm afraid I believe it's true. As a result of work, going on to date in committee and the House of Lords, we've heard already, I have full expectation that the Labour government is listening. It will bring amendments, it will consult on them, they will be based on the best evidence. So our energies, I believe, are best spent inviting local nature and ecology professionals to continue to input on those amendments, any of them, and make a serious difference to life in Stroud by letting, just letting Parliament's work take its course. And so I will not be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Councillor Schumacher.
So I'm so grateful to the many Labour MPs who stood up to the government when the government reduced the money to the disabled. I want now those Labour MPs to stand up again when nature is being threatened. We got 325,000, you said, children who are living in temporary accommodation. We got 1.4 million homes that haven't been built with our present planning system, that have got permission. Well, force those developers to build those homes. Yeah? So I'm basically saying the present system, with the local input also, we can't afford to lose that local input. We have to stand up to this government. It should do a wealth tax. It should do more protection for nature, not less.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm standing up, and I think I'm speaking to my colleagues and with what I'm about to say. But I'll begin by just making a comment to Councillor Oldham. King William, King Billy, as he was known where I come from, did cause a lot of bother around where I lived. So I'm glad he was doing something nice when he was here. Look, I fundamentally, I stand here as a Labour member. I fundamentally believe that the government is intent on addressing the housing crisis, is intent on addressing the poverty crisis, is intent in lifting children out of poverty. But I've also heard tonight that a body of experts has told us that there are problems with Part 3 of this bill. I've also heard tonight confusion in our own preparations for how we wanted to respond to this motion. And it feels to me as I stand here now that to do nothing feels like passively giving consent to something that may well be wrong. And I acknowledge that work is still to be done. There are still opportunities for Parliament to influence the content of this bill and perhaps redraft it in a way that is more appropriate, more meaningful, and has a greater effect and perhaps does less harm. I also want to echo what Councillor Fenton said about listening to communities. And I think that we could argue all night, maybe we will, about the wording that's here. And maybe the motion isn't very well written. Maybe it doesn't say everything that we mean to say. But in the simplest possible terms, we are simply asking our elected representatives to think again. And I think if we value listening to communities, then I see no harm in giving consent tonight to ask our elected representatives in Parliament to think again and to raise their voices. So I'm going to support the motion because I think we're asking for them to think. And we can forget about the detail that's here. We're simply asking them to think again about something that so many people are saying is badly drawn and is going to do more harm than good.
Thank you. I'm going to talk tonight about a rather painful dental issue that struggle. Oh, thanks. Yeah, that makes a difference. Having the fan straight at the mic is probably not a good idea. Sorry, I wasn't going to talk tonight because I'm dealing with a rather painful dental issue, but yeah, I can't keep quiet, but I will make it short. Because the longer it gets, the more painful it will probably get. The there are a number of crises that we're facing. What wasn't mentioned was the biodiversity crisis. We're facing serious biodiversity decline, and we have to do something about that. Having big funds to do big mitigation projects is great, but we don't have to do it this way. And to talk about newts, the odd pond with a couple of newts in holding up development. I'm sorry, it's just Boris Johnson rubbish. Sorry, we have district licensing for newts now. Well, a couple of newts in the pond does not have to hold up planning for ages. And NGOs and professional bodies have been begging, on bended knee, begging the government to work with them to try to amend the bill in Section 3, Part 3, whatever it's called. And they've been ignored. There's been no changes made at all in response to very professional people who, I know a lot of very experienced ecologists. I'm married to one, and the most moving sentence that I keep hearing is that this section, this whole section of that bill introduces the principle of pay to kill, that developers can pay some money into a big national fund and then they can kill protected species at will. That's what really horrifies ecologists in this country. From the most junior ones who went into it to try and protect protected species and reverse biodiversity decline, to the most experienced who know that you can't treat every protected species the same. There's no simple answer. You can't treat bats the same way you do newts. You can't, it's complicated. You do need to have local mitigation. You can't say, let's have a big fund to protect bats in the Forest of Dean, but developers in Wiltshire don't need to do any local mitigation if they come across bat roosts where harm can be caused. This is protected species legislation from the EU, which was supposed to be transcribed into our legislation, and we were promised that this was going to be sacrosanct. We were promised by Conservatives and Labour that we would stick by those principles of protecting nature and biodiversity. And I'm sorry, but that just seems to have been abandoned. I understand the need for housing. I understand social justice issues. I'm all for those, but you can do it without trashing nature at the same time. You really can.
Can I just check, is there anybody that wishes to speak that I haven't called? Councillor Hindsight and Councillor Dusson. Call Councillor Dusson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I feel deeply we do have a responsibility to care for the environment and to seek biodiversity and other nature enhancements. But we've also got a responsibility to listen to the voices of residents who are desperate for housing, the hidden homeless, and who are struggling with energy bills and have least resilience to the impacts of climate, such as prolonged high temperature, vulnerability, health issues, insurance against storm damage and so forth. And I don't think those voices have come into this debate at all. So I think there's a bit of an inequality there, just in terms of thinking about who is going to be at stake, who the stakeholders are in all of this debate. Because the whole purpose of these changes to the Planning and Infrastructure Bill is to try and get planning more to effectively and efficiently deliver housing, infrastructure to tackle climate change, as well as protecting nature. So I'm a little bit troubled when it gets very focused on just one aspect and gives a passing nod to the reasons why the government is looking at it, which the motion only does that. We've got pretty serious national priorities here. Housing crisis, climate emergency. The current system is not conducive to dealing with that at the pace which is now required because of so many years of inaction. So, to me, and it's been said already, this is about balance. We have to consider both sides of this debate. It's about efficiency and effectiveness. Alternative approaches are being proposed through this bill, which aim to tackle some of the time and resource-consuming aspects, which are here and now and affect people. Just talking to a farmer last week who wanted to put in a development, I asked him, what's the main problem? Planning. people just get held up so much trying to do better things for the environment by planning itself. So this bill is aiming to address some of the less efficient schemes which aren't delivering optimum enhancements. And remember, if we don't get some of these developments and infrastructure in place, for instance, to mitigate and adapt to climate change, the natural environment is going to suffer as well. So the main reason I don't support this is that it's suggesting we just withdraw Part 3 entirely, which means we're just left with something which isn't very good. It doesn't work at the moment very well. What I think we could have done better is to call for something which was looking at the recommendations which are coming forward from a number of bodies, which the government, we hear, is taking into account, and push for that. But I think withdrawing it entirely is just a non-starter for me, so I won't be supporting it.
Councillor Hindsight.
I guess I'll start where the last speaker finished and maybe pick up on that point. So I think the reason this motion is calling for the complete removal of Part 3 is because that's what the experts working in this field were calling for. So there was a coalition of environmental NGOs representing over 8 million members that were calling for it, and we're echoing and giving a political voice to those environmental NGOs. And I think sometimes it's important to be clear about what we're talking about here, and it's not just that this will have a slight damage or slight detrimental impact on the environment. I mean, to quote the CEO of the RSPB, like, we're not talking about Greenpeace here, like, they're not going and tying themselves to Parliament. This is the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. Their CEO said, "It will rip the heart out of the environmental protections and risk sending nature further into freefall." Now, that should be taken seriously when the RSPB tells us that. Or the CEO of the Wildlife Trust says, "This is an ideological charge against the natural world." Now, these are big words from NGOs that aren't known for being outspoken on matters. And I think if we're not listening to those, like, there's a real question of why we're not. I've been sort of slightly alarmed in the debate tonight about this sort of idea of pitching nature versus building the homes with need. And some of the speakers have touched on the fact that this binary isn't helpful. And I think most people in the room tonight accept that there's a housing crisis that we need to address, but we can't and shouldn't and don't do that by bulldozing nature. I wanted to pick up on the suggestion that this is all too late and that we've missed our chance to possibly have a discussion about this. I see the complete opposite. I see now as a really a significant political moment, and evidently the Labour government does as well, because they called these very same environmental NGOs into Westminster on Friday to hold an emergency meeting with them, to talk to them and to try and talk about what changes might be acceptable or might not be acceptable. And crucially, if they had come out of that meeting and gone, "Do you know what? They've listened and what they're proposing now sounds great," then I'd say that perhaps this wasn't needed. But instead, again, and I quote somebody who came out of those talks, "There's this deal trying to be struck by Angela Rayner's department and essentially say that we go quiet. But at the moment, what's being offered from that meeting is not anywhere near enough for us. We're not convinced." And I think that's the real significant point there. Before I finish, I've got one last point, which was to say that my colleague, Councillor Hughes, I think, might have inadvertently repeated a mistruth to the House, particularly around the Green Party MP, Adrian Ramsey, being opposed to renewable infrastructure. I accept that that's been reported, and you might have read that and then repeated that in good faith, but it's flagrantly not true. He's not opposing renewable infrastructure connections, and I'm happy to talk to you more about where that misunderstanding might have come from and about how going forward we can make sure we don't repeat that mistruth. And then last but not least, I just want to reiterate the point that I see our voice, and my colleague spoke a little bit about this, about giving a voice and giving a political voice now. And I mean, it was interesting, that quote I just finished with a second ago that was saying, like, they want us to be quiet. And I think this is the moment for us not to be quiet. This is the moment that demands that we speak up and we use our voice. And this is us using our platform, our very limited platform on Stroud District Council, to try and leverage further voices within our political system to protect nature in the way that we need.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it seems to have developed into a bit of a zero-sum game at times here, particularly on this side, I think, of housing or nature. We undoubtedly have a housing crisis in this country, but we also have more ancient trees in the UK than any other country in Europe, all combined together. Good statistic. And I think we surely must be able to find a way of fixing one of those problems whilst retaining the other. We must be able to protect our irreplaceable habitats. This bill doesn't do that. I'd also say this is about writing a letter. With the greatest respect to our CEO, I don't believe that a letter from Cathy to the Prime Minister is going to result in Part 3 being lopped off immediately. I think what it does do is send a message that Stroud District Council believes it's possible to do better than this and to achieve protection for our irreplaceable habitats whilst delivering better quality housing. So I will be voting for this, and I would encourage some of my colleagues to do the same.
Thank you. I think I can't see anybody else that wants to speak, so I'm going to ask Councillor Turner, as seconder of the motion, to speak.
Thank you very much. Really welcome all the comments and debate tonight. This is our first opportunity to comment on this bill because of the nature of the May AGM. So I'm sorry we haven't been able to do this sooner, but you know, this is the opportunity. I would have loved to have been involved earlier in the process, as would all the nature organisations. And, you know, I'm sorry we've had to tidy a couple of bits up, but it's an evolving situation. Terry acknowledged that he had misunderstood the parliamentary process that was required after this, and we've adapted our motion to our collective shared understanding. So, Bob, I don't think it's fair to comment on the nature of the motion, I'm afraid. And as for us grandstanding, we're here representing the natural environment that we live in. We're here representing all the people who've written to us about this, and we're representing Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust. We are, as Steve said, we are giving political voice to their concerns. So I do think there's a legitimate mandate tonight to be standing here to talk about this. The consensus amongst the ecological community to this bill was immediate in relation to Part 3, but I'm afraid government just haven't been listening. The Chartered Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management commented, "It's evident that the broad consensus of concern raised by a wide range of environmental professionals, professional bodies, NGOs, learned societies and developers has been entirely disregarded in the bill drafting process. No meaningful inclusions have been made to address the significant issues identified." So that's what we're talking about. All the people who know and understand this stuff have been excluded from the process. So no wonder we're here all shouting at this late stage. George Monbiot called it the worst attack on England's ecosystems I've seen in my lifetime. And yet Nature Minister Mary Creagh came back with a 3 short paragraph denial. Like we haven't been able to have the dialogue about these really important matters. It's now at the committee stage of the House of Lords. Many amendments have been put forward, including 39 by our Green MP, to prevent the bill from damaging wildlife and improve the contribution the planning system makes to nature recovery. As Steve mentioned, and in yesterday's Guardian, it was reported that Angela Rayner has offered 9 amendments, but those have not been found satisfactory, and as yet there is no agreement from the NGOs to sign the statement that Angela Rayner has put forward for them, or for them to stop their campaigns. I think where we're at is that we acknowledge the challenges around housing, but we also take incredibly seriously the concerns of the wildlife organisations who've united in an unprecedented way against the damaging impact of this piece of legislation. Nature is not a middle-class luxury, Bob. It's a fundamental tenet of social justice that people of every walk of life should have access to nature. And the idea that in a development, because the nature's a bit awkward, oh, we'll just pay and do it somewhere else. The impact of that is the people living in that community have lost that nature. So this isn't just about irreplaceable habitats, it's about people. And that is what we care about. So I'm afraid I feel very strongly about this motion. I'm really grateful to Catherine for bringing it tonight, and I will very definitely be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I ask Catherine to sum up, please?
Just to sum up, just very briefly, I would really like to pay tribute to the courageous MPs who are doing their job and scrutinising legislation line by line in the House of Parliament and the House of Lords. I think one of our own MPs, actually, Dr Simon Ofer, reflected the concerns of the Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust and the Severn Rivers Trust, who he'd spoken to, and asked whether the bill should be paused on part 3 in June this year. It's really important, and we can't take this kind of stuff on trust, where there is enough already, because of the way that bill is drafted, that will come forward in further regulations, which will have no parliamentary scrutiny at all. So we need to make sure that this framework legislation is right. I think some members might have misheard when I presented originally, because what I was calling for was a planning system that works. We need to see further housing delivered. We need certainty for developers so they know what their costs are and what their liabilities are. And we need, if the environment has any value at all, we need to make sure that the government is following the advice of its own advisors, the Office for Environmental Protection. There are just some basics here, and there's been no consultation at all. I welcome all the comments that have taken place this evening, and I do think that we could all get behind this motion, because it seems like the right opportunity for our district, for the people who need housing, but most importantly, for the protections that we have in place. And I hope everyone will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braun. I am now going to proceed to the vote. You are voting on the motion which is up on the screen as amended. That is the substantive motion. So could I see all those who are in favour, please raise their hands.
Well, at least once you can't count this time.
We're counting again. 25 in favour. All those against? Nine against. All those who are abstaining? 2 are abstaining. I declare that that motion is passed. Thank you very much for the debate.